The wedding dress was supposed to be white, not stained with rain, mud, and the blood from her scraped palms as she ran through Boston's back alleys like a hunted animal. Chloe Evans had everything: senator's daughter, Ivy League graduate, a future carved in marble. Then she overheard three words that shattered it all: kill her after. Her engagement wasn't love. It was an execution contract. Now she's got 24 hours, no phone, no allies, and men with guns who know every exit. Will she survive the night or become another convenient tragedy? Stick around to find out how far a desperate woman will go when her perfect life becomes a death sentence. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The chandeliers in the Ashford Estate ballroom cost more than most people's houses. Chloe knew because her mother had mentioned it approximately 14 times during the planning phase, always with that specific tone that meant, we're better than everyone here, but we'll pretend we're not. The crystals caught the light just right, throwing prismatic shadows across 200 faces: senators, judges, old money, new money, the kind of people who smiled with their mouths but calculated with their eyes. Chloe Evans stood near the champagne fountain in a dress that weighed approximately 17 pounds. Silk, lace, hand-beating that took some Italian woman 3 months to complete. Her feet hurt. Her face hurt from smiling. Her chest hurt from the corset boning that made breathing an Olympic sport. You look radiant, darling. Her mother, Patricia Evans, materialized at her elbow with that political wife glide, part grace, part predatory surveillance. Senator Michaels was just asking about the honeymoon plans. I told him Santorini, but honestly, Thomas hasn't confirmed. Mom. Chloe's voice came out flatter than intended. Can we not do the itinerary review right now? Patricia's smile didn't falter, but her eyes went sharp. This is your engagement party. People expect details. People expect a show, Chloe thought, but didn't say. That was the thing about being Senator Richard Evans's daughter. Every moment was performance art, every smile a campaign contribution, every relationship a strategic alliance. Thomas Whitmore, her fiancé, stood across the room in a cluster of men in expensive suits. Tall, handsome in that generic way that photographs well, Harvard law, family money that stretched back to the Mayflower or whatever. He looked like the kind of man who'd never had to fight for anything because everything had been prearranged since birth, including her, apparently. I need air. Chloe set down her champagne glass, untouched, because Patricia had drilled into her head that drunk girls don't marry into power. 5 minutes. Chloe. But she was already moving, weaving through the crowd with practiced ease, smiling and nodding at faces she'd known her whole life. Senator Chen, who'd voted against every welfare bill but donated to children's charities for the photo ops. Judge Harrington, whose son had gotten off on a DUI that should have been manslaughter. Mrs. Ashford herself, whose husband's hedge fund had bankrupted 3 pension funds but never faced consequences. These were her people, her world, her prison. The terrace doors were open. The April night air still carried winter's bite, but anything was better than the suffocating heat of bodies and expectations. Chloe stepped outside, immediately regretting it as the cold hit her bare shoulders. The Ashford estate sat on 20 acres outside Boston, all manicured gardens and old-growth trees that looked romantic in wedding photos and excellent for privacy. Privacy. Right. She walked further from the door, heels clicking on flagstone, until the sounds of the party became muted. There was a sculpture garden out here, abstract bronze figures that probably cost more than medical research, and she wandered into it, just wanting 5 minutes where no one was watching, judging, calculating her value as a political asset. That's when she heard the voices. Male, low, urgent. Chloe froze mid-step. The sculptures created pockets of shadow, and she'd walked into a space blocked from the main terrace by a massive twisted bronze thing that might have been a dancer or a dying horse. Abstract art was weird. The voices came from just around the corner. Timeline is set. After the wedding, 3 weeks max. Her father's voice. Senator Richard Evans, with that authoritative tone he used for committee hearings. And the girl? Another man. Chloe didn't recognize him, but he had an accent. British, maybe? She doesn't suspect? Chloe's smart, but sheltered. She sees what we want her to see. Her father's voice carried that dismissive edge he used when discussing things beneath his concern. Thomas has her convinced it's a love match. She's been planning the wedding for months, completely oblivious. Romantic. The British man sounded amused. And after? Silence. Then her father. The art collection will be transferred during the honeymoon. Chloe's name on the documentation makes it legitimate. She's got access to authentication networks her mother built. Once the transfer is complete, we move to phase 2. Which is? A third voice now, younger, American, corporate smooth. An accident. Her father said it like he was ordering coffee. Casual, simple. Tragic, obviously. Young bride, mysterious circumstances. Thomas will be devastated, publicly. The collection stays in family trust, which we control. Clean. Chloe's hand found the bronze sculpture for balance. The metal was cold. Everything was cold. You're certain she'll sign the transfer documents? British accent again. Thomas will handle it. She trusts him completely. Poor thing actually believes he loves her. Her father laughed. Actually laughed. The prenup routes everything through authentication channels. She'll sign her own death warrant thinking it's romantic insurance paperwork. And if she refuses? She won't. But if complications arise, we have alternatives. The important thing is the artwork moves before anyone looks too closely at what's actually being transferred. Data hidden in restoration records, the corporate voice said. Brilliant, really. Who audits art authentication? Exactly. Financial institutions are monitoring currency, wire transfers, crypto, but art documentation, restoration certificates, museum loan agreements? Her father sounded pleased with himself. We've moved 200 million in actionable intelligence through gallery channels in 18 months. Once this collection transfers to European buyers, the encryption keys embedded in the provenance records will be worth 10 times that. The British man and the senator's daughter provides perfect cover, provided she dies before she understands what she signed. Chloe's vision tunneled. The sculpture bit into her palm. She was gripping it hard enough that the edges cut skin. Her dress suddenly felt heavier, like it was pulling her down, drowning her in silk and lies. Kill her after. Not disown. Not divorce. Kill. Timeline? Her father was still talking, arranging her murder like a dinner reservation. 3 weeks post-wedding gives us ceremony photos for sympathy press. Thomas plays the grieving widower, very photogenic. We're thinking car accident. Tragic, but not suspicious. She's a nervous driver anyway. Chloe had heard enough. She stepped backward carefully, heel touching flagstone so softly it made no sound. Another step. The bronze figures created a maze. She navigated it blind, heart hammering so hard she thought they'd hear it, thought the whole party would hear it, this drumbeat of terror and betrayal. She made it back to the terrace. The party noise hit her like a wave. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. Everyone celebrating her future, her death. Thomas spotted her from across the room. He smiled, that perfect practice smile, and started toward her. Chloe ran. Not gracefully, not strategically. She just ran. Through the ballroom, past confused faces, her mother's shocked, "Chloe!" She heard it, but didn't stop, couldn't stop. The front entrance, down the stone steps, into the circular driveway where expensive cars sat in neat rows, drivers waiting. She needed keys, needed a car, needed... Miss Evans? A valet, young kid, looked startled. Are you... My phone. The lie came fast. Left it in my car. The Audi, silver, license plate. She rattled off her mother's plate number, praying. The kid hesitated. Behind her, voices. Someone calling her name. Please. She made her voice break. Not hard, since she was actually breaking. I need to call my sister. It's an emergency, please. He bought it, jogged toward the cars, scanning key tags. Chloe looked back. Thomas had reached the entrance, her father behind him. They hadn't started running yet, probably still thought this was a bride having cold feet, a dramatic moment that would become a funny story later. Remember when Chloe panicked and ran outside? The valet returned with keys. Wrong car, some BMW, but she grabbed them anyway. Wait, that's not... She was already in the driver's seat, engine starting, foot on the gas. The BMW lurched forward, tires squealing on the expensive paving stones. In the rearview mirror, Thomas was running now, shouting something. Chloe floored it. The Ashford estate gates were open, always open during events, because closing them looked paranoid, and paranoid didn't photograph well. She shot through them onto the main road, no plan, no destination, just away. Her phone was back at the party in her clutch. Wallet, too. She had a BMW that belonged to someone else in a 17-pound wedding dress. That was it. The road curved through dark woods. Boston proper was 20 minutes south, but going into the city meant cameras, traffic, witnesses. They'd find her in minutes. Thunder rumbled. Of course. Because this night needed rain. The first drops hit the windshield as Chloe tried to think. Her father had resources, police contacts, private security, political favors stacked like poker chips. Thomas's family had money and lawyers and connections that spiderwebbed through every institution that mattered. Together, they could make a woman disappear and call it tragedy. An accident. Tragic, obviously. Her hands shook on the wheel. The road blurred, rain, or tears, probably both. She needed help. But who? Her mother was complicit. Had to be. You don't marry a man like Richard Evans without knowing his darkness. Friends were all from the same circle, the same world, daughters of senators and CEOs who choose power over principle every time. The rain intensified. Chloe's perfect wedding hair, 3 hours in a salon, came loose, pins falling as the elaborate updo collapsed. She looked insane in the rearview mirror, mascara running, dress soaked, eyes wild. A sign, Boston, 15 miles. Then headlights behind her, fast, gaining. Chloe's stomach dropped. Could be anyone. Probably was anyone, just someone driving on a public road. But the car accelerated, got closer. High beams flashed. Not anyone. She pushed the BMW harder, 80 miles per hour on a winding road in the rain, wearing a wedding dress and heels she couldn't reach to remove. The speedometer climbed, 85, 90. The car behind her matched pace. A turn came up too fast. Chloe yanked the wheel, felt the back end slide, corrected, barely. The wedding dress tangled around the pedals. She kicked at it, yanked fabric, ripping seams and beading. The car behind her pulled alongside. Black SUV, windows tinted. The passenger window rolled down. A man in a suit, not wedding formal, work formal, lifted something. A gun. Chloe screamed and swerved right. The shot went wide, or maybe it hit, she couldn't tell. Everything was noise and motion and terror. The BMW's tires shrieked. She was hydroplaning, spinning, the world rotating in slow motion. The car left the road. There was a moment of weightlessness, almost peaceful, the eye of the hurricane, then impact. The BMW hit something solid, trees, a ditch, both. The airbag deployed, slamming into her chest, and everything went white, bright, nothing. When Chloe opened her eyes, rain was coming through the shattered windshield. Her chest hurt. Head hurt. Everything hurt in that distant way that meant shock, adrenaline, the body's damage control systems working overtime. The engine was dead. The car was tilted at an angle that suggested very bad things about the terrain underneath. Steam rose from somewhere, hissing in the rain. She had to move. Chloe fumbled with the seatbelt. Hands clumsy, numb, got it off. The door wouldn't open. She kicked it, once, twice, threw her shoulder against it. Nothing. The passenger side. She crawled over the center console, dress catching on everything, beating, scattering like rice at a wedding. The door opened. She fell out into mud and rain. For a moment, she just lay there, cold, wet, every part of her body screaming. The forest around her was dark. No streetlights, no houses, just trees and storm. Voices. Above her on the road. Men talking, sharp and professional. Down the embankment, check for survivors. Flashlights swept through the trees. Chloe moved, crawled first, then stumbled upright. Her heels sank into mud. She kicked them off, the ground cold and sharp against bare feet. The wedding dress dragged, heavy with water and dirt. She grabbed handfuls of fabric and ran. No direction, just away from the voices, away from the lights, into the darkness between trees that all looked the same. Branches tore at her dress, her skin, her ruined hair. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. Behind her, the flashlights bounced, multiplied. They were coming. The forest opened into a clearing. No, not a clearing. A yard. She'd stumbled onto property, someone's land. There was a house ahead, dark except for a single light in a downstairs window. Chloe didn't think, didn't plan. She ran toward it like a drowning person toward shore. Stone steps, slick with rain. A door, heavy, expensive wood. She pounded on it with both fists, probably leaving muddy prints, but not caring. Please, please, someone! Behind her, flashlights at the tree line, voices closer. Please! Her voice broke. They're trying to kill me. Please! The door opened. A man stood there, tall. Taller than Thomas, broader. Dark hair, dark eyes that took in her ruined dress, her bleeding feet. Her terror in about 3 seconds flat. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie, like he'd been home for hours but hadn't fully relaxed. Help me. The words came out as a sob. Please, they're... Flashlights hit the clearing behind her. Voices. There! The man's eyes went from Chloe to the approaching lights. His expression didn't change. No fear, no surprise, just calculation cold and fast. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her inside. The door slammed. A deadbolt turned. Living room. Stay down. His voice was low, accented. Italian, maybe, and carried the kind of authority that made you obey without questioning. Chloe stumbled into the room he'd indicated. It was elegant in an understated way. Leather furniture, dark wood, bookshelves, a fireplace with embers still glowing. She sank to the floor behind a sofa, dress pooling around her, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. The man walked to the door, just walked. No rush. A knock. Hard. Demanding. He opened it. Evening. His tone was pleasant, almost bored. Can I help you, gentlemen? We're looking for a woman, car accident nearby. Possibly disoriented, wandering. Did you see anyone? Car accident? The man sounded concerned now. No, I haven't seen anyone. When did this happen? 10 minutes ago. Young woman, dark hair, wearing a white dress. A dress in this weather? The man clicked his tongue. I've been home all evening. Haven't heard anything except the storm. You might try the properties further down. There's a few houses about a quarter-mile east. Mind if we take a look around? The voice had shifted, less polite, more threat. Silence. When the man spoke again, his voice had changed too, still pleasant, but underneath something else, something that made the hair on Chloe's neck stand up. Actually, I do mind. It's late, it's raining, and you're on private property without a warrant. If you're genuinely concerned about an accident victim, call the police. I'm sure they'll conduct a proper search. We are the police. Then you'll have no trouble getting that warrant. Until then, the sound of the door closing, not a slam, somehow worse than a slam, a definitive, controlled thud. Footsteps. The man walking back into the living room. Chloe looked up from her hiding spot behind the sofa. He looked down at her. There was something in his face, not kindness exactly, more like recognition, like he'd seen desperate people before and knew exactly what they looked like. They're not police, he said flatly, and that's not mud on your dress. Some of that's blood. He crouched down, eye level with her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me your name, who's chasing you, and why, and then I'm going to decide whether you stay or you go. Outside, an engine started, drove away slowly, deliberately. They weren't gone, just regrouping. Chloe's voice came out hoarse. My name is Chloe Evans. My father is Senator Richard Evans. And those men out there are trying to kill me because I found out that my wedding is actually a contract for my murder. The man stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. It wasn't a comforting smile. It was the smile of someone who'd just been handed an interesting problem. Well, Miss Evans, he said, standing and offering her a hand, that's quite an entrance. I'm Marco Ravellini. Welcome to my home. Let's get you out of that dress before you bleed on my carpet. Chloe took his hand. It was warm, solid, real. As he pulled her to her feet, she noticed details. The expensive watch, the tailored shirt, the way he moved. Controlled, confident, dangerous. She'd run from one threat straight into another. She knew that. But for some reason, looking into Marco Ravellini's dark eyes, she didn't feel more afraid. She felt like maybe, for the first time tonight, she'd found someone who wouldn't underestimate her, or kill her for being inconvenient. Probably. The bathroom was larger than her childhood bedroom. Marble everything, rainfall shower, towels that probably cost more than normal people's bedding. Marco had given her a robe, black silk, monogrammed, and disappeared, leaving her alone to get out of the destroyed wedding dress. Getting it off was harder than getting into it had been. The zipper was stuck. The corset laces were tangled. Her hands were shaking too badly to work the tiny buttons. Finally, she just grabbed fabric and pulled, ripping seams that had taken months to sew. The dress fell away. Underneath, she was a disaster. Bruises blooming on her ribs from the airbag, scrapes on her arms and legs, her feet cut and swollen. She looked like she'd gone through a war. Maybe I have. The shower was hot enough to hurt. Chloe stood under it until the water ran clear instead of mud brown, watching weeks of preparation and lies circle the drain. Her perfect hair, ruined. Her perfect nails, broken. Her perfect life, dead. She cried. Finally. Fully. The kind of ugly crying that was half scream, muffled by water and steam. Every plan she'd made, every future she'd imagined, every moment of the last 6 months, engagement announcement, venue selection, dress fittings, guest lists, seating charts, all of it, had been a countdown to her execution. And she'd smiled through it. Posed for photos? Written thank you notes? Stupid. So stupid. No, not stupid. Trusting. There was a difference. Except trust had almost gotten her killed. By the time she turned off the water, she felt hollowed out, empty, raw. The robe was too big, but it was warm and dry. She wrapped her hair in a towel and opened the door. Marco was waiting in the hallway, leaning against the wall like he had all the time in the world. He'd changed shirts, different white one, same rolled sleeves. He held a glass of amber liquid. "Whiskey," he said, offering it. "You look like you need it." "I don't drink." "You didn't get shot at before tonight either. Things change." He pushed off the wall. "Living room. We need to talk." Chloe followed him, clutching the robe closed. The whiskey burned going down, but he was right. It helped. Something about the heat in her chest pushed back against the cold terror everywhere else. Marco sat in an armchair near the fireplace. He'd added logs while she'd been in the shower. It was crackling now, throwing gold light across the room. Chloe took the sofa across from him, tucking her feet under her. "Start from the beginning," Marco said. "The real beginning." So she did. The engagement party, the overheard conversation, the words that had shattered everything, kill her after, the art collection, the data smuggling, the authentication channels, her father's casual dismissal. She's smart, but sheltered. Thomas's role, the setup, the chase, the crash. Marco listened without interrupting. His face gave nothing away. No shock, no sympathy, no judgment. Just that steady, calculating attention. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, "Your father is Senator Richard Evans, Massachusetts, yes? Foreign Affairs Committee, Trade Oversight? Yes? You know him?" "I know of him. Different circles." Marco's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "But I know the game he's playing. Art smuggling is elegant, hard to trace, easy to justify. Rich people moving expensive paintings around. Nobody questions it. But using authentication records to hide data." He nodded, almost appreciative. "That's smart. Embedded in restoration certificates, provenance documentation, museum loan agreements. Who audits that?" "How do you—" Chloe stopped. "What do you do, Mr. Ravellini?" "Marco. And I'm in acquisitions, import-export, complicated supply chains." He took a sip from his own glass. "The specifics don't matter. What matters is that I understand the world your father operates in, and I understand why you're valuable to him, and why you're a problem now that you know the truth. They'll kill me." She said it flat, factual. The crying in the shower had burned out the hysteria. "If they find me, they'll make it look like an accident, and everyone will believe it because my family controls the narrative." Yes. No sugarcoating. Chloe appreciated that, in a twisted way. Those men tonight weren't police. Private security, probably ex-military. Your father has resources. If he wants you dead, you will be unless you're very smart and very lucky. "So what do I do?" The question came out smaller than she wanted. "I have no phone, no money, no ID. Everyone I know is either part of this or will report back to my father the second I contact them. I'm a ghost in a bathrobe. Not a ghost, a liability. Marco leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But here's the thing about liabilities. They're only problems if they're unmanaged. You've got information your father doesn't want public. That's leverage. Leverage? Chloe's laugh was bitter. Against a senator? I'm one person. He's got lawyers, money, politicians in his pocket. If I go public, I'm discredited or dead before the story hits print. If you go public alone, yes, but you're not alone anymore. Marco's eyes were steady on hers. You walked into my house, Miss Evans. That changes things. Chloe set down her glass. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, I'm lying, crazy, a problem you don't need. True. But I don't think you're lying. That dress didn't destroy itself, and those men weren't lost tourists. As for crazy, he shrugged. Debatable, but useful. You know the authentication networks, the art channels, the documentation systems. That's specialized knowledge. So you want to use me? Not a question. I want to offer you a deal. You need protection and resources. I need information about your father's operation, how the data moves, who's involved, what the artwork actually conceals. We help each other. Chloe studied him. In the firelight, Marco looked dangerous and controlled, the kind of man who made decisions fast and didn't lose sleep over them. She'd grown up around powerful men, but they'd all been politicians, corporate types, people who smiled while they calculated. Marco didn't bother with the smile. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt honest. If I say no, she asked, I put you in touch with some people who can get you new identification and a bus ticket somewhere your father won't look. You disappear, change your name, start over, hope he never finds you. Marco paused. He will, eventually. Men like your father don't leave loose ends. And if I say yes? You stay here. We figure out exactly what your father's moving and why. We gather evidence, real, actionable evidence. And when we have enough, we destroy him before he can destroy you. Destroy a United States senator. I've handled worse. Marco said it like he was discussing the weather. Maybe he had handled worse. Chloe was realizing she knew absolutely nothing about the man who'd saved her life, except that he had the kind of calm that came from seeing terrible things and surviving them. The fire crackled. Rain drummed against the windows. Somewhere out in the darkness, men with guns were looking for her. Chloe thought about running, hiding, becoming someone else in some small town, waitressing under a fake name, always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the day her father's people found her. Then she thought about her father's voice in the garden. She's smart, but sheltered. Sheltered, like she was a child, a doll, something to be positioned and posed and discarded when she'd served her purpose. She thought about Thomas's smile, the engagement ring he'd put on her finger with practiced tenderness, the wedding they'd planned together, every detail a lie, every moment a step closer to her grave. She thought about the other women her father might do this to, the other families whose daughters would be leverage, collateral damage, acceptable losses in whatever game powerful men were playing. Chloe met Marco's eyes. I want more than survival. I want revenge. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition. Good, Marco said. Revenge is better motivation than fear. Fear makes you careful. Revenge makes you dangerous. He stood, offered his hand again. So we have a deal? Chloe stood too. Her feet hurt. Her body hurt. Her heart hurt in ways she couldn't name yet. But her mind was clear. She shook his hand. Deal. But I have conditions. Marco's eyebrows rose. Bold, go on. I'm not just an information source. I'm part of this operation, whatever it is. I make decisions, I'm in the room, I'm not sheltered or protected or kept in the dark. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. You realize you're negotiating with someone who could have turned you over to those men for a favor. But you didn't, which means you see value in me beyond the obvious. So here's what I'm offering, my knowledge, my access, my face, because I can get into places you can't. In exchange, you teach me everything, how to fight, how to survive, how to be the kind of person my father never expected me to become. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. You're full of surprises, Miss Evans. Chloe, and you have no idea. Fair enough. He released her hand. Then here's condition number 1. Tomorrow, we start training. You're soft, sheltered, exactly what your father said. That's a liability. We fix it. I can handle it. We'll see. Condition 2. You follow my rules inside this house. I have security measures, and if you compromise them, we're both dead. Agreed. Condition 3. Marco's expression went serious. If at any point this gets too dangerous, if your father gets too close, I put you on a plane out of the country and you don't argue. Your life is worth more than revenge. Chloe wanted to argue, wanted to insist she'd see this through no matter what. But Marco's eyes had something in them. Not pity, but maybe understanding. Like he knew what it was to want revenge more than air, and what it cost. Okay, she said quietly. If it comes to that. It won't, but if it does. He moved toward the doorway. For now, you need sleep. Guest room is upstairs, second door. I'll have some clothes brought in tomorrow. You can't exactly wear a bathrobe forever. Marco? Chloe's voice stopped him. Why are you really doing this? There's got to be 100 reasons to throw me out and forget you ever saw me. He looked back at her, framed in the doorway, backlit by the hall light. For a moment, his controlled expression cracked, and she saw something underneath, old anger, old pain, something that understood exactly what it felt like to be betrayed by people who should have protected you. Because men like your father operate on one principle. Other people are tools, and tools get discarded when they're used up. I spent a long time being someone's tool. Marco's voice was quiet. I don't like seeing it happen to someone else. Then he was gone, footsteps fading down the hall. Chloe stood alone in the living room, firelight dancing on the walls, rain still falling outside. The whiskey glass sat on the table, half empty. Her destroyed wedding dress was somewhere in the bathroom, a 17-pound corpse of her old life. She should have been terrified, should have been crying, panicking, regretting every choice that led her here. Instead, she felt awake, alive, angry. Her father had tried to make her a victim, a tragedy, a convenient casualty. He was about to learn he'd miscalculated. Chloe Evans wasn't going to run, wasn't going to hide, wasn't going to be the sheltered senator's daughter who died without a fight. She was going to become something he'd never see coming. And when she was done, everyone would know exactly what Richard Evans really was. Outside, thunder rolled. The storm wasn't over, it was just beginning. The guest room was too quiet. Chloe lay in a bed that wasn't hers, wearing a robe that belonged to a stranger, staring at a ceiling she couldn't see in the darkness. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard her father's voice. An accident, tragic, obviously. Saw Thomas's perfect smile. Felt the BMW leaving the road, that moment of weightlessness before impact. Sleep was impossible. Around 3 a.m, she gave up and wandered downstairs. The house was dark except for ambient light from security systems, little green and red dots that blinked like mechanical eyes. Marco had said he had security measures. Apparently he'd meant it. She found the kitchen by accident, drawn by a sliver of light under a door. Inside, marble counters, professional-grade appliances, and Marco sitting at an island with a laptop and coffee that smelled strong enough to strip paint. He looked up when she entered, didn't seem surprised. Can't sleep, Chloe said, stating the obvious. First night after trauma never works. Marco closed the laptop. Coffee? I don't drink coffee either. You're missing out. But he got up and pulled out tea bags from a cabinet that was suspiciously well organized. Chamomile or English breakfast? You have a tea selection? I have guests occasionally. Some of them have opinions about caffeine. He filled a kettle, set it on the stove. The domesticity of it was jarring. This man who looked like he could kill someone without breaking a sweat, making tea at 3 a.m. Chloe slid onto a stool. Do you sleep? Not much. Habit. Marco leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You want to talk about it, or you want to sit in silence until the sun comes up? I want to know what happens next. You said training starts tomorrow, today, technically. What does that mean? It means I teach you how not to die. He said it bluntly. You're a target now, and you don't have the skills to survive what's coming, so we fix that. I took self-defense in college. 1 semester. That's adorable. Did they teach you what to do when someone puts a gun in your face? Marco's tone wasn't mocking, just matter of fact. Or how to tell when you're being followed? How to hotwire a car, pick a lock, fake an identity? No. Then you don't know self-defense. You know some moves that work in a gym with rules and mats, and an instructor who stops things before anyone gets hurt. The real world doesn't have refs. The kettle screamed. Marco poured water over a tea bag in a mug that said, "World's okayest boss." Chloe almost laughed. This dangerous man with his sarcastic mug and his matter-of-fact discussion of violence. "How long?" she asked, accepting the tea. "How long until I'm ready?" "For what? To survive an encounter? A few weeks, if you're fast. To actually be dangerous?" Marco shrugged. "Months. Maybe longer. You're starting from scratch." "I don't have months." "Then we work fast, and you accept that some lessons are going to hurt." He sat across from her, his coffee cup dwarfing hers. "Physical training starts at 6, hand-to-hand, situational awareness, escape tactics. Afternoons, we work on your father's operation, mapping the network, identifying players, finding weak points. You already know about the art smuggling. I know the concept. I need specifics, names, galleries, authentication channels, who handles the documentation. You said your mother built those networks. Elaborate." Chloe wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "My mother, Patricia, she was an art authenticator before she married my father. High-end stuff, museum quality, private collections, estate sales. She had relationships with everyone who mattered in that world. Authentication boards, restoration experts, insurance appraisers." "And your father used those relationships." "He must have. I never saw it, never questioned why he was so interested in her work, why he'd attend gallery openings and donor events. I thought he was being supportive." The bitterness in her voice surprised her. "He was building an intelligence network disguised as an art collection." Marco was quiet for a moment, processing. "The wedding, Thomas Whitmore. Where does his family fit? Old money, shipping, and logistics? Whitmore International moves cargo worldwide. Legal cargo, I thought. If you wanted to physically transport artwork..." Chloe trailed off, seeing it now. "His family provides the infrastructure. My mother provides the authentication. My father provides the political cover. And you provide the fresh face for the operation. Senator's daughter, clean reputation, art world connections through your mother. Perfect." Marco's expression was thoughtful. "Except now you're a liability who knows too much. So they kill me and move forward with someone else." "Maybe. Or maybe they're more exposed than they think. If this conspiracy relies on your mother's specific relationships, your access to authentication networks, your name on documentation, removing you creates gaps. Gaps we can exploit." Chloe sipped her tea. It was too hot, burned her tongue, but the pain felt grounding. "You keep saying we. You're really willing to go against a senator and everyone connected to him?" "Senators bleed like anyone else, and I've gone against worse." Marco's voice carried something old, something that suggested history Chloe didn't know yet. "Besides, your father's operation isn't just about art. Data smuggling at this scale. That's intelligence, blackmail material, financial crimes. If he's moving 200 million in actionable intelligence, he's got buyers. Foreign governments, maybe. Corporate espionage. Whatever it is, it's big enough that exposing it doesn't just hurt him, it brings down everyone involved." "That's the goal? Bring them all down?" "That's the goal. But first, you survive long enough to see it happen." Marco stood, rinsed his cup. "Get some rest, real rest. In 3 hours, your new life starts, and it's going to hurt." Chloe climbed back upstairs as the sky outside started shifting from black to gray. She lay down, certain sleep still wouldn't come. She was wrong. Exhaustion hit like a hammer, and she dropped into darkness so complete that when Marco knocked on her door at 6, she felt like she'd only been down for minutes. "Up," he called through the door. "Jim's downstairs. Don't make me drag you out." The gym was in the basement, professional setup with weights, punching bags, mats, and equipment Chloe didn't recognize. Marco was already there in workout clothes, looking annoyingly awake. "Clothes are in the locker room. They'll fit well enough." He gestured to a door. "Change. We start in 5. The clothes were black: leggings, sports bra, tank top. Everything fit suspiciously well, which raised questions Chloe decided not to ask. When she emerged, Marco was wrapping his hands. "We'll start with basics. how to fall without breaking bones, how to get up fast, how to take a hit. He tossed her hand wraps. You're going to hate me by the end of this. He wasn't wrong. The first hour was falling, learning to roll, to distribute impact, to protect her head and vital organs. Marco demonstrated once, then made her do it 50 times until her shoulders screamed and she had mat burns on her arms. Again. I can't. You can. Again. She did it again and again. Until the movement became automatic, muscle memory overriding the part of her brain that wanted to quit. The second hour was striking. How to make a fist without breaking her thumb. Where to hit. Throat, solar plexus, groin, knees. Marco held pads and called out targets while Chloe hit them until her knuckles bled through the wraps. Harder. You're not trying to annoy him. You're trying to survive him. I'm hitting as hard as I can. Then get stronger. Marco's voice was relentless. Your attacker isn't going to give you a break because you're tired. He's going to keep coming until you're dead, or he is. So hit harder. She hit harder. Her arms felt like lead. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Everything hurt. Good. Again. By hour 3, Chloe was ready to throw up. Marco had moved to grappling, how to break holds, how to escape when someone was bigger and stronger. He put her in a chokehold from behind, not enough to actually hurt, but enough that panic clawed at her throat. Breathe, think. Where's his balance? She couldn't think. Could barely breathe. Her hand scrabbled at his arm uselessly. Wrong. Stop. Reset. Marco released her. You're panicking. Panic gets you killed. When someone grabs you, you have 3 seconds before you pass out. Use them. His balance point is here. He touched his own knee. Drop your weight, drive your elbow back, stomp his instep. You're not strong enough to break the hold directly, so you break his structure. They ran it again and again. Chloe lost count of repetitions. But slowly, painfully, her body started learning what her brain couldn't process fast enough. Drop, elbow, stomp, twist. The 4th time, she actually broke free. Better. Marco stepped back. You're done for today. Shower, eat, then we talk about your father's network. Chloe could barely walk up the stairs. Her legs shook. Her arms hung useless at her sides. In the bathroom, she caught sight of herself in the mirror, hair plastered to her head with sweat, face flushed, new bruises forming on top of old ones. She looked like hell. She looked alive. The shower helped. Breakfast helped more. Marco apparently had someone who cooked, because there was food waiting when she came into the kitchen. Eggs, toast, fruit. She ate like she was starving, which she was. Marco joined her, his own plate smaller, more controlled. How do you feel? Like I got hit by a truck. Good. That means you're using muscles you've never used before. It gets easier. When? Never. You just get better at suffering. He pushed a bottle of water toward her. Drink. Then we work. The dining room had been converted into a command center. Laptop, papers, a whiteboard covered in names and connecting lines. Chloe stared at it, trying to make sense of the web Marco had started building. I spent the last few hours pulling information, Marco said, gesturing to the board. Your father, Richard Evans. Senator, 12 years. Foreign Affairs Committee, Trade Oversight. Perfect position to facilitate international smuggling. Your mother, Patricia Evans, née Whitman. Art authenticator, board member at 3 major museums, consultant for private collectors. Thomas Whitmore, your charming fiancé, son of Charles Whitmore who runs Whitmore International. Chloe's stomach turned seeing their names laid out like suspects, because that's what they were. Suspects. Criminals. Here's what I need from you, Marco continued. Your mother's authentication network. Who does she work with? What galleries? What auction houses? Who handles the paperwork when pieces move between collections? Chloe closed her eyes, thinking. She works primarily with the Kensington Gallery in Boston. They handle high-end sales and authentication. The director is Lawrence Ashford. Ashford? As in the Ashford estate where your engagement party was? His house? His gallery. He's been friends with my parents for 20 years. Marco added the name to the board, drew a connection line. Who else? Restoration experts. There's a firm called Renaissance Touch that handles most of the high-value work. Maria Castellano runs it. And for international pieces, there's an import specialist, David Chen. He handles customs, shipping documentation, insurance. More names, more lines. The web grew. Your mother must have files, Marco said. Client lists, authentication records, correspondence. Where does she keep them? Home office. But I can't exactly walk in and ask to borrow them. No, but you know the security system, the layout. If we needed to access those files, hypothetically, how would we do it? Chloe blinked. You want to break into my parents' house? I want to know if it's possible. There's a difference. She thought about it. The house in Beacon Hill, 3 stories, security that was good but not paranoid. Her father relied on his reputation and connections more than physical barriers. There's an alarm system, but I know the code. My old room has a window that doesn't lock properly. I used it to sneak out in high school, and my mother's office is on the 2nd floor, accessible from the main stairs. So it's doable. Marco, if we get caught, we don't get caught. But that's later. First, we need more information. You said the artworks contain embedded data. How? Chloe leaned against the table, trying to remember conversations she'd half ignored at the time. Authentication certificates include detailed documentation, photography, chemical analysis, restoration history. Each piece has a digital record that travels with it. If you wanted to hide data, you could embed it in the image files, the metadata, even the restoration notes. Steganography, hidden in plain sight. Marco nodded. Who has access to those digital records? Authentication board members, gallery directors, insurance appraisers. Anyone involved in verifying or moving high-value pieces. And your mother sits at the center of all those relationships, perfect position to inject false data or hide intelligence in legitimate documentation. Marco tapped the board. We need to identify a specific piece, one that's moved recently or is scheduled to move. If we can intercept it, examine the documentation, we can prove the data smuggling exists. The wedding. Chloe's voice went quiet. Thomas said we'd receive art as wedding gifts. My mother was coordinating with donors, arranging authentication and insurance. There's a list somewhere, pieces that were selected, authenticated, ready to be transferred. To you. Clean recipient, no suspicion. And once you were dead, the collection would go to family trust, which your father controls. Marco's expression hardened. That list is evidence. We get it. We have the beginning of a case. It's probably at my mother's office, or the gallery. Then that's our target, but not yet. You're not ready, and we need more planning. For now, keep thinking. Anyone else involved? Any names you've heard, places, suspicious conversations? Chloe dug through memories, trying to see them through this new lens. Dinner parties where her father had spoken in careful phrases. Gallery openings where her mother had introduced her to people with vague job titles. Phone calls that ended when Chloe entered the room. There was a man, she said slowly. Last month at a donor event. Foreign, European accent, maybe the same man I heard in the garden. My father introduced him as a cultural attaché, but the way they talked... She trailed off. It felt wrong, too familiar, not diplomatic. Description? 50s, gray hair, expensive suit, spoke multiple languages. My mother called him Victor. Marco's expression shifted, something sharp and dangerous. Victor Kozlov? Maybe. I didn't catch the last name. You know him? Of him. Russian oligarch, officially. Unofficially, he's an intelligence broker. Buys and sells secrets, facilitates transactions between people who can't be seen together. If he's involved, this isn't just corruption, it's espionage. The word hung heavy. Espionage. Her father wasn't just a corrupt politician, he was a traitor. Chloe sat down hard. How deep does this go? As deep as it needs to. Money, power, secrets, they're all currency. Your father's probably been building this network for years, using his position to gather intelligence, your mother's connections to move it, Whitmore's logistics to transport it. Marco pulled out a chair, sat across from her. The question is what he's selling and to whom. Does it matter? Either way, he needs to be stopped. It matters because it determines who comes after us. If this is just financial crimes, we deal with lawyers and law enforcement. If it's intelligence trafficking with foreign actors, we're dealing with people who will burn this entire city to protect their investment. Marco's voice was steady, but his eyes were serious. You need to understand what you're signing up for. This isn't just revenge. It's war. Chloe met his gaze. 24 hours ago, she'd been a senator's daughter planning a wedding, worried about seating charts and flower arrangements. Now she was sitting in a stranger's house, bruised and exhausted, discussing espionage and murder like it was normal. Nothing about this was normal, but going back to who she'd been, sheltered, trusting, blind to the monsters around her, that was impossible now. Then we go to war, she said quietly. What's the first move? Marco smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting for her to ask that question. First, we make you disappear officially. Right now you're a missing bride. There's probably a search, police reports, your face on the news. We need to control that narrative. How? We make them think you're dead. Not obviously, that invites too much scrutiny, but if evidence suggests you died in the crash last night, drowned in the river maybe, body washed away. Marco shrugged. Tragic accident. Everyone mourns. The heat dies down. And you become a ghost they're not actively hunting. Chloe's chest tightened. You want to fake my death. I want to give you breathing room. Your father won't stop looking until he's certain you're gone. If he thinks you're dead, we can move freely while he focuses on damage control. What about my mother? Chloe stopped. Would her mother grieve, or would she be relieved that a problem was solved? The thought made her sick. Your mother is complicit, Marco said, not unkindly. You need to accept that. She's not a victim here. She built the infrastructure your father's using. Grieving daughter or not, she's part of this. I know. The words tasted bitter. I know. It's just hard to accept that your parents are monsters, yes, but accepting it is how you survive them. Marco stood. I have contacts who can plant evidence, feed information to the right channels. Within 48 hours, there'll be reports of a body matching your description found downriver. Inconclusive identification, but enough for reasonable assumptions. And then? Then we train harder. You learn everything I can teach you in the time we have, and when you're ready, we hit them where it hurts. We steal the evidence, expose the network, and destroy everyone who tried to destroy you. Chloe stood too, ignoring the protest from muscles she'd abused all morning. How long before I'm ready? For what we need to do? 2 weeks minimum. Maybe 3. That's not enough time. It's the time we have. Your father will move fast to secure his operation now that you're a variable. We need to move faster. Marco headed toward the door, then paused. Get some rest. This afternoon, we work on surveillance, detection, and tradecraft. Tonight, I teach you to shoot. I've never touched a gun. You will by tomorrow. And you'll keep touching it until pointing and firing is as natural as breathing. He looked back at her. Everything about you needs to change, Chloe. The way you move, the way you think, the way you react when threatened. The girl who ran from that engagement party can't survive what's coming. So we kill her and build someone new. Who? Someone your father will never see coming. The door closed behind him, leaving Chloe alone in the room with the whiteboard and its web of names and crimes. Her family, her fiancé. People she'd trusted, loved, believed in, all of them willing to kill her for convenience. She walked to the board, picked up a marker, and wrote her own name at the center of the web. Then she drew a line through it, a slash that bisected Chloe Evans into 2 pieces. The girl she'd been was gone, dead in a car crash in the rain, drowned in a river, tragic, and mourned, and forgotten. What came next would be something else entirely, something dangerous. She spent the afternoon learning to spot a tail, how to use reflections, how to change pace and direction, how to identify surveillance patterns. Marco was relentless, drilling her on details until she could pick out the same person across 3 different scenarios. He was good at this. Too good, which raised questions about his past that Chloe filed away for later. Evening brought the gun range, a shooting gallery in another section of the basement, soundproofed and professional. Marco started her on a 9mm, teaching her grip and stance and sight picture. The first shot shocked her, the recoil, the noise even through ear protection, the violence of it. She nearly dropped the gun. Again. You don't have to think, you have to shoot. Again. By the 10th shot, her hands were steadier. By the 50th, she was hitting the target more than she missed. Not well, center mass was still aspirational, but better than random. Good enough for now, Marco said, taking the gun and making it safe. You won't be a sniper in 2 weeks, but you can put rounds on target at close range. That's what matters. Have you killed people? The question came out before Chloe could stop it. Marco looked at her for a long moment. Yes. How many? Enough that I stopped counting. Does that scare you? It should have. A day ago, it would have sent her running. But now, standing in a shooting range in a stranger's basement, learning to aim at center mass on a paper target, Chloe found she wasn't scared. She was relieved. Because the people coming for her, her father's hired killers, Thomas's allies, whoever Viktor Kozlov worked for, they'd killed before too. She needed someone on her side who understood that world, who could navigate it, who wouldn't hesitate when hesitation meant death. No, she said finally. It doesn't scare me. Should it? Probably. But I'm not going to waste time convincing you I'm a good person. I'm not. I'm a criminal with a specific set of skills, and right now those skills keep you breathing. That's the arrangement. What do you get out of this? Really? Chloe pressed. Information about my father's network. Fine. But this is dangerous for you too. Why risk it? Marco set the gun on the bench, turned to face her fully. Because I was 12 years old when my father sold me to pay a debt. Traded me like I was cargo, like I was a thing that could be owned. I spent 5 years learning that people are disposable to men with power. And when I finally got free, I decided I'd never be disposable again. Never be a tool for someone else's ambition. His voice was level, factual, but underneath Chloe heard old rage and older pain. Your father looked at you and saw a convenient death, a problem to solve. That's what powerful men do. They use people up and throw them away. So when you walked into my house bleeding and desperate, I saw someone who needed what I needed 15 years ago. A chance, an ally, a way to fight back. He picked up the gun again, started breaking it down for cleaning. Besides, exposing a U.S. senator engaged in intelligence trafficking, that's the kind of chaos I can use. Opens doors, settles old scores, shifts power structures. So yes, I'm helping you, but I'm also helping myself. At least I'm honest about it. Chloe watched him work, practiced hands moving through the familiar routine of disassembly and maintenance. He was right. He wasn't a good person, wasn't a hero, was probably exactly the kind of man her father would have warned her about if he weren't busy planning her murder. But he was honest, and right now, that mattered more than morality. Thank you, she said quietly. Marco glanced up, surprised. For what? For not lying to me. For not pretending this is something it's not. Everyone else in my life has been lying for so long I forgot what truth sounded like. Truth is overrated, but it's efficient. He finished cleaning the gun, slid it into a case. Get some food, get some rest. Tomorrow we start earlier, 5 a.m. I want to push your conditioning. Why earlier? Because in 2 weeks, we're going to break into the Kensington Gallery and steal documentation that proves your father's a traitor. And when we do, there's going to be approximately 15 different ways it can go wrong. The stronger and faster and smarter you are, the better our odds. And if it goes wrong, then we improvise. But improvisation works better when you're not dead, so let's avoid that. Chloe left him in the basement and climbed back to the main floor. The house was quiet. No staff, no sounds except her own footsteps. She made a sandwich in the kitchen, forcing herself to eat even though her body wanted to just collapse. The television was on in the living room. She almost missed it, just ambient noise, but then her name caught her attention. Still missing after last night's incident, Chloe Evans, daughter of Senator Richard Evans, disappeared during her engagement party at the Ashford estate. The senator released a statement earlier today expressing concern. Chloe moved to where she could see the screen. Her own face stared back, an official photo, probably from her college graduation. Smiling, polished, completely unaware that her life was about to implode. Her father appeared on screen standing outside their Beacon Hill house. He looked devastated, red eyes, rumpled suit, the picture of a worried parent. We just want Chloe to come home safely. Whatever happened, whatever she's feeling, we can work through it together. Please, if anyone has information... The performance was flawless. If Chloe hadn't heard him planning her death, she'd believe every word. Her mother stood beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Thomas hovered in the background, appropriately concerned. The whole tableau was carefully staged, Worried family, tragic circumstances. Please help us find her. Police are investigating the possibility of an accident, the reporter continued. A vehicle matching the description of one stolen from the Ashford estate was found abandoned near the Charles River. Authorities are searching the area, though the storm last night has complicated recovery efforts. The screen cut to footage of the crash site. Twisted metal, emergency lights, police tape. It looked worse than Chloe remembered. The BMW was barely recognizable. This is a developing story. We'll continue to update as more information becomes available. For now, a family waits and hopes for answers. Back to you in the studio. Chloe turned off the television. Her hands were shaking again, not fear this time, but rage. Her father was good. Playing the devastated parent, manipulating public sympathy, controlling the narrative even now. And her mother, the concerned wife, tragic and brave. They were selling a story, and everyone was buying it. Marco appeared in the doorway. You saw. He's good at this. He's had practice. Politicians lie for a living. Marco crossed to the window, checked something outside. The good news is they're committed to the tragic accident theory. That gives us room to move. In a few days, when the body turns up, they'll have closure. The investigation closes. Everyone moves on. Except us. Except us. Marco turned back to her. In the meantime, you're dead to the world. No contact with anyone from your old life. No social media, no phone calls, nothing that could give away your location or status. You're a ghost. I'm already a ghost. I've been one my whole life, just didn't know it. Chloe moved away from the dark television. I spent 26 years being who they wanted me to be. Perfect daughter, perfect student, perfect bride. And none of it mattered because I was never a person to them, just a tool. Now you're a weapon, Marco said. Their mistake was not finishing you when they had the chance. By the time they realize you're still alive, it'll be too late. Chloe looked at him, this criminal who'd saved her life, this stranger who'd become the only person she could trust. What happens after? After we expose them, after it's done? What happens to me? Whatever you want, new identity, new city, new life. Or you stay in this world, learn the trade, become something permanent. I could use someone with your connections and intelligence. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you options. Most people don't get those. Marco headed toward the stairs. Think about it. But not tonight. Tonight you sleep. Tomorrow, we make you dangerous. Chloe did sleep eventually, deep and dreamless, her body finally overriding her racing mind. When Marco knocked at 5 the next morning, she almost felt human. The training was brutal, worse than the first day because Marco kept pushing harder, kept adding complexity. Hand-to-hand combinations, weapon retention drills, scenarios where he'd attack without warning and she'd have to respond on instinct. She failed constantly, got thrown, got choked, got disarmed. But each failure taught her something. Where her balance was weak, where her technique fell apart under pressure, where panic overrode training. You're thinking too much, Marco said after she'd botched an escape for the 5th time. Combat isn't a chess game. You don't have time to plan 3 moves ahead. You see, you react, you survive. Everything else is noise. Easy for you to say. Nothing about this is easy. It's just necessary. He reset, grabbed her again. Stop thinking. Move. She moved. Not perfectly, but faster. Her elbow found his ribs. Her foot found his knee. She twisted free, stumbled back, reset her stance like he'd taught her. Better. Again. By day 4, Chloe stopped counting bruises. By day 7, she could break most of Marco's holds more often than not. By day 10, she was shooting tight groups at 15 yards and could field strip the 9mm in under a minute. She was nowhere near Marco's level, probably never would be, but she was dangerous enough. That would have to be good enough. The evenings were strategy. They mapped the Kensington Gallery, security systems, staff schedules, access points. Marco had contacts who provided blueprints, patrol routes, alarm codes. Chloe contributed insider knowledge, Lawrence Ashford's habits, her mother's schedule, the authentication vault location. The vault is in the basement, Chloe explained, pointing to the blueprint. Climate-controlled biometric locks. Only Ashford and senior staff have access. Including your mother? As an authentication consultant, yes. She'd need access to verify pieces. Then we use her credentials. Can you mimic her signature? Chloe had never tried, but her mother's handwriting was familiar. She'd forged permission slips in high school when her mother was too busy for parent signatures. Probably, if I have samples to practice with. Good. We'll need that for documentation. The actual entry, though, we can't use the front door. Too many cameras, too much exposure. Marco traced a line on the blueprint. Service entrance, east side. Delivery trucks use it. Less security, blind spot in the camera coverage. How do we get in? Marco smiled. We walk in during business hours with a delivery, hide until close. Then we work. That simple? The best plans usually are. It's the execution that gets complicated. They spent day 12 running through the plan, timing, contingencies, escape routes. Marco played out scenarios where things went wrong, forced Chloe to adapt on the fly. By the end, she could navigate the gallery layout in her sleep. Day 13, Marco took her to the city. Not downtown, somewhere industrial, lots of warehouses and empty streets. He parked, handed her a lockpick set. That building. Get inside without triggering the alarm. You have 5 minutes. Chloe stared at the lockpick tools. Tiny metal pieces that looked useless. I don't know how to... You do. I showed you twice. Now do it under pressure. Marco checked his watch. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. She got it open with 30 seconds to spare, her hand shaking but the lock turning. Inside, Marco was waiting. Not bad. Do it again, faster. They drilled for hours, locks, alarms, bypassing security. By the time they drove back, Chloe could pick most standard locks in under 2 minutes and disable basic alarm systems. Day 14 was final prep. Equipment check, timing review, last-minute adjustments. Marco was focused, methodical, running through details with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Last chance to back out, he said that evening. Tomorrow night, we go. Once we're in motion, there's no stopping. If something goes wrong, if we're caught, your father will know you're alive and he'll come at you with everything he has. But Chloe looked at this whiteboard, her father's name at the center of a web of corruption and treason. 2 weeks ago, that name had meant safety, family, love. Now it meant enemy. I'm not backing out, she said firmly. Tomorrow, we take back everything he took from me, starting with the truth. Marco's van was unmarked and ordinary, the kind of vehicle that disappeared into city traffic without a second glance. They'd left before dawn, Chloe dressed in coveralls with a fake company logo stitched across the back. Her hair was tucked under a cap, face bare of makeup. In the mirror, she looked like a stranger. That was the point. Remember the timing, Marco said, navigating through early morning Boston. Delivery window opens at 7. We go in with the art supply shipment, basic inventory check. Ashford's assistant signs off. We move the boxes to storage and we stay behind when the crew leaves. And if someone notices we're not part of the regular crew, they won't. I've used this company before. They rotate drivers constantly. Just keep your head down, look bored, and don't make conversation. He glanced at her. You ready for this? Chloe's stomach was a knot of tension, but her hands were steady. 2 weeks of training had given her that much. The ability to function through fear. Ready. The Kensington Gallery occupied a converted brownstone in Back Bay, all historic architecture and discreet wealth. The kind of place where transactions happened in hushed tones and price tags had more zeros than cents. Chloe had been here dozens of times for openings and viewings, always through the front entrance as Senator Evans's daughter. Now she was entering through the service door like hired help. The delivery truck was already there, actual crew unloading wooden crates with professional efficiency. Marco backed the van in alongside them, killed the engine. Stay close. Follow my lead. They grabbed boxes from the back, empty except for packing material, but heavy enough to sell the performance. The service entrance was propped open, a bored security guard checking clipboards without much interest. Art supplies for restoration, Marco said, his accent different now, flatter, working-class Boston. Where you want them? The guard barely looked up. Basement storage, past the stairs. Check in with Linda. They were in. The corridor was utilitarian, concrete floors, fluorescent lights, the unglamorous guts of an elegant building. Marco moved with practiced ease, like he'd done this before. Probably had. Chloe followed, keeping her head down, watching how the real delivery crew moved and copying their body language. Basement storage was a maze of shelving and climate-controlled rooms. Linda turned out to be a woman in her 50s with reading glasses and a permanent expression of mild irritation. She checked Marco's fake invoice, signed off without reading the details, and waved them toward an empty corner. "Stack them there. Try not to block the walkway this time." "Yes, ma'am." Marco set down his box. Chloe did the same. They made 3 more trips with the crew, establishing presence, becoming part of the scenery. On the 4th trip, Marco caught her eye and tilted his head toward a storage room that wasn't quite visible from Linda's desk. They slipped inside while the real crew was upstairs. The door closed. Silence. "Now we wait," Marco whispered. He checked his watch. 6 hours until closing. Try to get comfortable. Comfortable was impossible. The storage room was cramped, full of art supply overflow and empty frames. They wedged themselves behind a stack of crates where they'd be invisible if someone opened the door. Then it was just waiting, watching the time crawl, listening to muffled sounds from the gallery above, trying not to think about everything that could go wrong. Chloe's mind wandered despite her attempts to focus. 14 days since the engagement party. 14 days since her world had exploded. It felt longer, like that life belonged to someone else, a naive girl who'd believed in love and family and happy endings. That girl was dead. Good riddance. "You're thinking too loud," Marco murmured. "I can hear it from here." "How do you turn it off, the thinking?" "Practice. Years of it. You get used to operating in the space between panic and boredom." He shifted slightly, adjusting his position. "For what it's worth, you're doing well. Most people would have fallen apart by now. Most people's fathers aren't trying to kill them. You'd be surprised. Family dynamics get dark once money and power enter the equation." Marco's voice was barely audible. "My father sold me to cover gambling debts, told himself it was temporary, that he'd buy me back. He never did. So I stopped being his son and became something else entirely." Chloe looked at him in the dim light filtering through a ventilation grate. "How old were you when you got free?" 17. "And free is generous. I traded one prison for another, just with slightly better terms. Took another 5 years before I was actually autonomous." He met her eyes. "Point is, the people who hurt us don't get to define who we become. That's our choice." "Who did you choose to become?" "Someone who can't be used. Someone who makes the rules instead of following them. Someone who survives." Marco smiled without humor. Not a good person, but an effective one. Before Chloe could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. They both froze. The steps passed without pausing, just staff moving through the building. But the reminder was sharp. They were infiltrating a secure location, hiding like criminals, about to commit theft. Because that's what they were. Criminals. The thought should have bothered Chloe more than it did. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Around 3, Chloe's legs started cramping from the confined position. She shifted carefully, trying to restore circulation without making noise. Marco produced a water bottle from somewhere, passed it to her. They shared it in silence. 5 o'clock brought the sound of closing procedures, staff securing galleries, alarms activating in sections, the building settling into evening mode. Voices called goodbyes. Doors locked. Then quiet. Marco checked his watch. 20 minutes. They'll do a final sweep, then everyone leaves. After that, we have maybe 2 hours before night security does another round. That's enough? Has to be. The vault access you described, biometric and key code. Can you get us in? If the system hasn't been updated since my mother last showed me. She used her thumbprint and a 6-digit code. I don't have her thumbprint, but... Chloe pulled out a small device Marco had given her days ago. A scanner loaded with her mother's biometric data, lifted from a wine glass at a gallery event Marco had somehow accessed. This should work. Maybe. Maybe is what we've got. Marco eased the storage room door open, checked the corridor. Empty. Move quiet, move fast. If we're spotted, we abort and scatter. Don't try to help me, just run and get out. They slipped into the corridor like shadows. The basement was eerily quiet now, all the day's activity replaced by the hum of climate control systems and security equipment. Chloe's training kicked in. Stay aware, use cover, minimize exposure. All those drills Marco had run her through were suddenly desperately relevant. The authentication vault was exactly where the blueprints had shown, a reinforced door at the end of a corridor lined with restoration rooms. No cameras here, Chloe remembered her mother explaining once. Cameras could be hacked, and the art world valued discretion above all else. That discretion was about to bite them. The biometric scanner glowed faintly beside the door. Marco positioned himself as lookout while Chloe approached it with the device. Her hands wanted to shake. She forced them still. This was no different than the lock-picking drills. Technical problem, mechanical solution. Fear was noise. She pressed the scanner against the reader. The device emulated her mother's thumbprint, playing back the biometric signature with digital precision. A pause, then a soft beep. First layer cleared, the keypad illuminated. 6 digits. Chloe's mind raced through possibilities. Her mother's birthday? Too obvious. Her parents' anniversary? Maybe. She tried it. Nothing. The screen flashed red. 2 more attempts before lockout, Marco warned softly. Think. What would her mother use? Something memorable but not public. Chloe closed her eyes, reaching for memories. Her mother at her desk, typing codes, always the same rhythm. 6 numbers she'd type without looking because they were muscle memory. The date she'd gotten her authentication certification. Chloe had heard the story a dozen times, the day Patricia Whitman had become Patricia Whitman, certified art authenticator, before she'd become Patricia Evans, senator's wife. The achievement her mother was proudest of, the identity she'd had before marriage and politics and conspiracy. Chloe entered the numbers, held her breath. The lock clicked. The door released. "We're in," she whispered. The vault was smaller than expected, maybe 10 by 12 feet, lined with climate-controlled storage units and filing cabinets. Everything about it screamed security and discretion. Marco slipped inside behind her, pulled the door almost closed but not latched. Their escape route. "Authentication documents," Marco said, moving to the filing system. "Anything recent? Anything with your father's art collection?" Chloe found the right cabinet, organized alphabetically, because her mother was nothing if not methodical. Evans, Richard. The folder was thick, years of transactions and authentications. She pulled it, started photographing pages with a small camera Marco had provided. Dates, titles, gallery references. Authentication certificates with embedded digital signatures. Proof of legitimate art transactions. Except if Marco was right, these documents contained something else entirely. Data hidden in the authentication metadata. Intelligence embedded in provenance records. "Found the wedding list," Chloe said, pulling another file. 24 pieces scheduled for transfer, all authenticated, all ready to move. Each one represented a vector for data smuggling. "Photographing now." Marco was at a computer terminal in the corner, fingers moving rapidly across the keyboard. Their digital archive. Encrypted, but not well. Whoever set this up prioritized convenience over security. He plugged in a small drive. "Cloning the database. If the embedded data is in here, we'll have it." The drive's indicator light blinked, progress bar showing transfer speed. Chloe kept photographing, methodically documenting everything. Names jumped out at her. Victor Kozlov, Charles Whitmore, David Chen, Maria Castellano. All the players in her father's network, all connected through art authentication and movement. "How long on the transfer?" Chloe asked. 3 minutes? Maybe 4. A sound outside. Footsteps in the corridor. They both froze. The footsteps were measured, deliberate. Security patrol, ahead of schedule. Marco's hand went to his waistband. Chloe caught the outline of a gun she hadn't seen him put there. His eyes met hers. "Stay quiet. Stay still." The footsteps paused outside the vault. A radio crackled. "Checking the authentication level. All clear so far." The door handle moved. Marco grabbed Chloe, pulled her behind a storage unit in the corner where shadow was deepest. They pressed together in the cramped space, barely breathing. The door opened fully. A security guard entered, older man, heavy set, moving with the bored efficiency of someone doing a routine check. He swept a flashlight around the vault, the beam passing inches from where they hid. Chloe's heart hammered. The camera in her pocket felt impossibly obvious. Marco's hand was on his gun, ready. The guard's radio crackled again. "Anderson, you copy? Need you on the main floor. Possible alarm trigger at the north entrance." "Copy that. Vault secure." The guard did one more sweep with his light, then turned and left. The door closed behind him. His footsteps retreated. Chloe exhaled shakily. That was too close. Transfers complete, Marco said, ejecting the drive. We have the database. Time to go. They packed up fast. Files back in place, cabinet closed, everything as they'd found it. Marco checked the corridor before they emerged. Then they moved quickly toward the service stairs. The guard's radio had said main floor trouble. That was their diversion, their window. The service exit was ahead, 20 feet, 10. Voices above them. Multiple people coming down. Marco grabbed Chloe's arm, pulled her into a restoration room. They ducked behind a work table covered in restoration equipment. Through the door crack, Chloe saw figures descend. Not security, something else. Men in suits, moving with purpose. Should have been handled already, a voice Chloe recognized. Lawrence Ashford, the gallery director. I don't care what Evans promised. Having loose ends is unacceptable. The girl's dead. They found the body yesterday. Dental records confirmed it. Another man, unfamiliar. Evans is satisfied. We can proceed with the transfers. Chloe's blood went cold. They'd found a body? Dental records? Marco had said he'd arrange evidence, but an actual body with her records. Then we move the collection this week. The European buyers are getting impatient, and Kozlov doesn't like delays. Ashford's voice faded as they passed. Make sure Chen handles the customs documentation personally. No more contractor errors. The men continued down the corridor toward the vault they'd just left. Marco waited 30 seconds. Then, now, fast and quiet. They hit the service exit at a run, burst into the alley behind the gallery. The van was where they'd left it, around the corner in a loading zone. Marco started the engine before Chloe had her door closed. Go, go! She didn't need to say it. They were already moving, pulling into traffic with the controlled urgency of people fleeing without appearing to flee. Several blocks away, Marco's shoulders finally relaxed. You okay? They said they found my body, with my dental records. Chloe's voice was shaking. How? Where did you? Jane Doe from the state morgue. Approximate age and build, unidentified, no family. I have contacts who can alter medical records. Marco's tone was matter-of-fact. Your father needed closure. We gave it to him. Now he thinks you're dead and his operation is secure. That's our advantage. You used a real person's body. I used an opportunity. That woman was already dead, already unclaimed. Nothing we did changed that. Marco glanced at her. You want to feel guilty about it? Go ahead. But she gave you the breathing room to stay alive and finish this. That means something. Chloe wanted to argue, wanted to feel the horror that should have accompanied learning she'd been identified using someone else's corpse. But the bigger part of her, the part that had emerged in the last 2 weeks, understood the brutal pragmatism. They were at war. Soldiers made hard choices. Did we get what we need? She asked instead. Photos of documents? Complete database clone, evidence of the network connections. Now we need to decrypt the embedded data and prove what's actually being moved. Marco turned down a side street, heading out of Back Bay. I have someone who can analyze the authentication records, extract whatever intelligence is hidden in the metadata. How long? Few days? Maybe a week? Depends on the encryption sophistication. He paused. What Ashford said about moving the collection this week, that's our deadline. Once those pieces leave the country, the data goes with them. We need to break this open before that happens. They drove in silence for several minutes, the adrenaline of the infiltration slowly fading into exhaustion. Chloe's body ached, tension and fear converted to physical stress. She wanted to shower, sleep, forget the look on that security guard's face when he'd almost seen them. But that was the old Chloe talking. The new one knew better. There was no forgetting, no breaks, no safety until this was finished. The wedding transfers, she said, pulling out her notes. 24 pieces scheduled to move. If each one contains embedded intelligence, that's potentially millions in exposed secrets, depending on what's being sold. Marco's jaw was tight. Your father's not just corrupt. He's trafficking state intelligence to foreign buyers. If we can prove that, document it, expose it publicly, he goes to prison. They all do. If we're lucky. If we're not, they disappear us before anyone hears the evidence. Marco pulled into a parking structure downtown, several blocks from his house. Standard counter surveillance, park away, walk back, check for tails. But either way, we make noise. Enough noise that they can't silence us quietly. They ditched the van on level 3, walked separately to street level, then regrouped 2 blocks away. The walk back to Marco's house took 40 minutes with the cautious route he insisted on. By the time they arrived, Chloe was running on fumes. Inside, Marco went straight to his computer setup in the study. Chloe followed, watching him upload the stolen database and photographs. His fingers moved with practiced speed, organizing files, beginning preliminary analysis. "Eat something, then sleep," he said, without looking up. "Tomorrow we start breaking down this data." "I can help. You're dead on your feet. You won't be useful like this." He finally looked at her. "This is a marathon, not a sprint. We got the data. That's the hard part. The analysis takes time and specialized skills you don't have yet, so rest. Let me work." Chloe wanted to argue but recognized the truth. She was exhausted, running on adrenaline and stubbornness. "Wake me if you find something critical." "I will." She made it upstairs barely. The bedroom felt impossibly safe compared to the vault they'd infiltrated. She stripped out of the coveralls, fell into bed without bothering to shower, and dropped into darkness so complete it felt like drowning. When she woke, pale morning light filtered through the curtains. She'd slept 12 hours straight. Downstairs, she found Marco still at his computer, multiple monitors displaying data streams and analysis tools. He looked like he hadn't moved. "Tell me you slept at some point," Chloe said. "Define sleep." Marco pulled up a file. "But I found something. Come look." The screen showed an authentication certificate for a painting, some abstract piece Chloe vaguely remembered from her mother's collection. But Marco had it broken down into component files, the digital signature exposed. "See this metadata?" He pointed to a string of code. "Embedded in the authentication image file. It looks like normal documentation, date stamps, camera information, processing notes. But hidden in the least significant bits of the image data is another layer entirely. Steganography. Exactly. And not amateur hour either. This is sophisticated encryption, military grade. Your father's people knew what they were doing." Marco pulled up another file. "I found the same pattern in 18 of the 24 wedding pieces. Each one contains embedded encrypted data hidden in the authentication photography." "What's in the data?" "That's where it gets complicated. The encryption is serious, AES 256 at minimum, probably with additional layers. I can't crack it alone." Marco leaned back. "But I know someone who can. Problem is, involving another person increases our risk." "Can we trust them?" "As much as I trust anyone, which is conditionally and with proper incentive." Marco closed the laptop. "Her name is Alexis Chen. She's a cryptographer. Works freelance for various interested parties. No loyalty except to whoever's paying. David Chen handles the customs documentation for my father's operation. Related? Brother. They don't speak, family drama involving money and morals, but she'd have insight into how his part of the operation works." Marco stood, stretched. "I'll reach out, see if she's interested in a decryption job. Meanwhile, you need to keep training. We're not done with the physical part of this." The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Mornings were still training. Marco pushed her harder now, adding weapons retention and combat shooting drills. Afternoons were analysis, poring over the stolen documents, mapping connections, building a comprehensive picture of her father's network. Alexis Chen arrived on day 4. She was younger than Chloe expected, maybe 30, Asian American, with the kind of casual confidence that suggested she'd seen some things and survived them. She assessed Marco's security setup with professional appreciation, then turned her attention to Chloe with undisguised curiosity. "So you're the dead senator's daughter. Nice work on the dental record swap, by the way. Very thorough." "Marco handled that part," Chloe said. "Still, takes guts to fake your own death and come after your family." Alexis dropped a messenger bag on Marco's desk. "I like it. Scorched Earth is underrated." "Can you decrypt the files?" Marco asked, all business. "Probably. Let me see what we're working with." Alexis settled in front of the computer, pulled out equipment from her bag. Within minutes, she was deep in code, muttering technical terms Chloe only half understood. Hours passed. Chloe brought coffee, food, anything to keep Alexis working. Marco hovered, answering questions, providing context about the source files. Finally, as evening fell, Alexis sat back. Got the first layer broken. And wow, your dad's involved in some premium treason. Show me, Marco said. Alexis pulled up decrypted files. They were documents, meeting notes, transaction records, intelligence summaries. Chloe scanned them, her stomach sinking with each line. He's selling classified foreign policy briefings, she said, her voice hollow. Position papers on trade negotiations, diplomatic communications, committee intelligence. Everything he has access to as a senator. And look at the buyer list. Marco pointed to another file. Russian FSB contacts, Chinese MSS, private military contractors, corporate intelligence firms. He's not even discriminating. He's selling to anyone with cash. The artwork is just the delivery mechanism, Alexis added. Each piece moves through customs with authentication documentation. The customs officials see art provenance, gallery certificates, museum loan paperwork. They don't see the encrypted intelligence buried in the image files. How much has he moved? Chloe asked. Based on this archive? 200 million over 18 months, like you said. But that's just cash value. The intelligence itself is worth more. Destabilizing trade agreements, exposing covert operations, compromising diplomatic personnel. Alexis whistled. Your father's not just corrupt. He's a national security threat. Chloe sat down heavily. Seeing it spelled out in decrypted files was different than knowing it abstractly. Her father had betrayed his country, sold out his oath, endangered lives, all for money and power. Can we prove it? She asked. In a way that holds up publicly? We have the authenticated documents, the encrypted files, and now the decrypted intelligence showing what's actually being sold, plus the network connections. Kozlov, Whitmore, Chen, Castellano, Ashford. It's a comprehensive case. Marco looked at Alexis. How many files can you decrypt? All of them, given time. But time is something you probably don't have. Ashford said they're moving the collection this week. Then we need to move faster. Marco pulled up a calendar. Today's Thursday. If they're shipping this week, it's probably Friday or Saturday for timing. Weekend customs are less thorough. We have maybe 48 hours to decrypt enough evidence and get it public before the intelligence leaves the country. I can work fast, Alexis said. But going public, that's complicated. Who do you trust with this? Regular FBI? They might have people on your father's payroll. Local police? Same problem. Media? They'll want verification, which takes time. We don't need one source. We need multiple, Chloe said suddenly. An idea was forming, built from 2 weeks of strategy sessions with Marco. We leak simultaneously to multiple outlets: press, law enforcement, intelligence community. Make it too big to suppress, too distributed to control. Scorched earth, Alexis said approvingly. I like how you think. But first we need more evidence. Marco, you said there's an auction tonight at the Ashford estate. High-value pieces, private buyers. Chloe looked at him. What if one of those pieces contains intelligence that's being sold to a foreign buyer in real time? You want to crash an auction. I want to steal a painting in the middle of a criminal transaction and expose everyone involved, on camera, with witnesses. Chloe's voice was steady. Make it impossible to deny, impossible to spin. Marco studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, that dangerous smile that meant he was calculating odds and liking them. The Ashford estate is a fortress, security, cameras, guests who'd recognize you even with alterations. It's suicide. It's also the perfect stage. All the players in one room, conducting an illegal transaction they think is secure. We infiltrate, we document, we take the evidence, and we disappear before they realize what happened. You've been dead for 2 weeks. Walking into your engagement party venue is asking to be caught. Not if I do it right. Not if we're smart. Chloe leaned forward. You said I needed to become someone my father wouldn't expect, someone dangerous. This is how I prove it, by walking into his world and burning it down from the inside. Alexis looked between them. This is either brilliant or insane, possibly both. Those aren't mutually exclusive, Marco said. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, if we do this, and that's a conditional if, we need perfect execution. Disguises, cover identities, exit strategies. One mistake and we're both dead. I won't make mistakes. Chloe's voice was hard. I've spent 2 weeks learning from you, training for exactly this kind of operation. I'm ready. You think you're ready. There's a difference. Then test me, right now. Whatever scenario you want, whatever pressure you think I can't handle. Test me, and if I fail, we call it off. But if I pass, we do this my way. Marco's eyes narrowed. You're serious? Completely. He stood abruptly. Alexis, keep decrypting. Prioritize the most recent transactions. Chloe, with me, Jim, now. The gym session was brutal. Marco didn't hold back. He attacked with full intensity, forcing Chloe to defend, counter, adapt on the fly. He switched weapons mid-drill, changed scenarios without warning, put her through every situation they'd practiced, and several they hadn't. Chloe fought back with everything she'd learned. When he grabbed her, she broke free. When he came at her with a training knife, she disarmed him. When he put a fake gun to her head, she pivoted, struck, took him down. Not perfectly. She took hits, made mistakes, got thrown twice, but she got back up, kept fighting, kept adapting. Finally, after an hour that felt like 3, Marco called it. He was breathing hard, first time Chloe had seen him actually winded. You'll do, he said simply. You're not perfect, but you're dangerous enough to survive what's coming. So we do this? Marco looked at her, the senator's daughter who'd transformed into someone who could fight, steal, infiltrate, and scheme. Who'd faked her own death and was ready to walk back into the lion's den for revenge. We do this, he confirmed, but my way, my plan, my rules. You're my partner in this operation, but I have final say on tactics. Agreed? Agreed. They shook on it. Chloe's hand was still wrapped from training, knuckles raw. It hurt. She didn't care. Auction starts at 8, Marco said. We have 6 hours to plan, prep, and transform you into someone who can walk past your father's security without being recognized. Then we infiltrate, document the transaction, steal the evidence, and get out before anyone realizes the dead girl is back. And after? After we burn everything down and watch it collapse. Your father, Whitmore, Kozlov, all of them. We destroy the network, expose the treason, and make sure everyone knows exactly what they did. Chloe smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been betrayed, murdered in effigy, and resurrected as something her enemies hadn't anticipated. Let's get to work, she said. The next 6 hours were a blur of preparation. Alexis worked on decrypting more files while Marco and Chloe planned the infiltration down to the minute. Guest lists were analyzed, cover identities created, disguises assembled. For Chloe, the transformation was radical. Hair dyed darker, styled completely different. Contact lenses changing her eye color. Makeup that altered the shape of her face made her cheekbones sharper, her features more angular. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. That's the point, Marco said. You need to be a stranger, someone who wouldn't trigger recognition even if your father looked right at you. He was transforming too, different hair, different bearing, expensive suit that screamed old money. They looked like exactly what they were pretending to be, wealthy collectors interested in high-value art acquisitions. At 7:30, they loaded into a different vehicle, a luxury sedan that matched their cover identities. Alexis stayed behind, coordinating from Marco's secure computer setup. I'll monitor communications, watch for security responses, hack whatever needs hacking, she said. You two just don't get caught. Worst case scenario, Marco said. We scatter. Don't try to meet up, don't try to contact each other, just run and survive. We regroup when it's safe. Chloe nodded. She was wearing an evening gown that cost more than most people's cars, or had, before Marco's contact had acquired it through questionable means. Hidden under the elegant fabric were weapons, recording devices, and tools for theft. She felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap into action. The drive to the Ashford estate was surreal. 2 weeks ago, Chloe had fled this place in a stolen car, running for her life in a wedding dress. Now she was returning in designer clothes and calculated calm, walking back into danger with purpose. The circular driveway was full of expensive cars, valet parking, security checks at the door, the whole performance of wealth and discretion. Marco handed over invitation cards, perfectly forged by one of his contacts, and they were waved through with barely a glance. Inside, the ballroom was exactly as Chloe remembered. Crystal chandeliers, expensive crowd, champagne flowing. But now she saw it differently. Not as a celebration venue, but as a criminal marketplace dressed up in elegance. Stay focused, Marco murmured. We're here to observe, document, and acquire. Nothing else matters. They moved through the crowd, champagne glasses in hand for cover. Chloe cataloged faces. Lawrence Ashford holding court near the front, David Chen in conversation with shipping executives, Maria Castellano examining a painting with professional interest. And there, near the back, talking to a gray-haired man in an expensive suit, her father. Senator Richard Evans looked distinguished as always, the picture of political authority and respectability. He was laughing at something the other man said, completely at ease, completely oblivious that his supposedly dead daughter was 30 feet away. The gray-haired man was Victor Kozlov. Chloe recognized him from that brief encounter at the donor event, confirmed by the cold calculation in his eyes. He was examining a painting, abstract expressionist piece, probably worth 6 figures legitimately, worth more for what it contained hidden in its authentication data. That's our target, Chloe whispered to Marco. Whatever Kozlov's buying, that's active intelligence transfer. Agreed. We need to intercept it after the sale, but before transport. The loading area, probably. They'll move it to Kozlov's vehicle within the hour. They watched the auction proceed. Pieces were presented, bids made with subtle gestures, sales concluded with elegant efficiency. Everything professional, legitimate, refined, all of it covering treason. The abstract piece came up. Bidding was perfunctory, clearly prearranged. Kozlov's representative made the winning bid. Papers were signed. The painting was marked for transport. Now we wait for the move, Marco said. When they take it to the loading area, that's our window. They drifted toward the side entrance that led to service areas. Security was lighter here. Guests didn't generally wander into staff territory. Marco's confidence carried them through the few checkpoints they encountered. The loading area was behind the estate, discreet and utilitarian. They watched from a concealed position as workers brought the painting out, carefully secured in protective wrapping. A black SUV was waiting, expensive, armored, diplomatic plates. Kozlov's vehicle. 2 men in suits flanked it, security, armed, professional. This was going to be complicated. Change of plan, Marco said quietly. We can't take it here, too exposed, but I can plant a tracker. Follow it to wherever Kozlov's staying, hit the location when security is thinner. That gives them time to discover the theft, lock down. Hitting them here gets us caught or killed. Sometimes patience is survival. Chloe wanted to argue, wanted to insist they move now while the painting was vulnerable. But Marco was right. The security presence was too heavy. Patience wasn't cowardice. It was strategy. Marco moved while she provided lookout. He was fast, professional, nearly invisible as he approached the SUV and attached a GPS tracker under the rear wheel well. Then he was back, blending into shadow, and they were retreating before anyone noticed. They made it back to the ballroom just as her father was giving a short speech, thanking everyone for supporting the arts, for preserving culture, for being part of something meaningful. Every word was a lie. Chloe watched him perform, this man who'd sold out his country while playing the patriot, this man who'd ordered her death while playing the loving father. She wanted to scream the truth at him right there, expose him in front of everyone, but that would accomplish nothing except getting them both killed. Revenge wasn't about impulse. It was about precision. We have what we need, Marco said. Time to go. They left the estate as smoothly as they'd entered, just 2 more wealthy collectors departing an exclusive event. Back in the sedan, Alexis's voice crackled through the comm. Got the tracker signal. Following the vehicle now. It's heading into downtown Boston, looks like. The Westin waterfront. Presidential suite, probably. Can you get building schematics? Marco asked. Already pulling them. Also, good news, I've got 12 more files decrypted. The intelligence your father's been selling includes active covert agent identities, diplomatic negotiation strategies, and classified infrastructure vulnerabilities. This isn't just corruption. It's collaboration with hostile foreign intelligence. Document everything. We're going to need it all. Marco glanced at Chloe. How are you holding up? I saw my father, watched him laugh and smile while selling out his country. Chloe's voice was steady. I'm fine. Better than fine. I know exactly what I'm doing now. They drove back to Marco's house in silence, adrenaline slowly fading. The hard part was still ahead, breaking into wherever Kozlov was staying, stealing the painting with its embedded intelligence, getting out alive. But they'd proven tonight they could operate in the heart of enemy territory, could walk past her father without being recognized, could steal information right under their noses. The dead girl had returned, and she was bringing hell with her. Back at the house, Alexis had transformed Marco's study into a war room. Multiple monitors displayed surveillance feeds, decrypted files, and a live map tracking the GPS signal from Kozlov's vehicle. The painting had arrived at the Westin waterfront 20 minutes ago and hadn't moved since. Presidential suite, 17th floor, Alexis said, pulling up building schematics. Security is heavy. Kozlov's traveling with a 6-man detail plus hotel security. The painting's in the suite, probably secured in their temporary holding area. So we can't just walk in, Chloe said, studying the layout. Not through the front door, but hotels have vulnerabilities, service elevators, maintenance access, HVAC systems. The Westin's older construction, renovated, but still has the original shaft infrastructure. Marco traced a line on the schematic. If we can access the service areas, we can reach the 17th floor without passing through guest corridors. That gets us to the floor. How do we get into the suite? Carefully. Marco pulled up security camera positions. Kozlov's people will have the hallway covered, probably motion sensors on the door. We need a distraction, something that pulls security away long enough for entry. Fire alarm, Alexis suggested. Classic, but effective. Trip it on a different floor, security responds. You have maybe 3 minutes of chaos. 3 minutes to break in, locate the painting, and get out. Chloe shook her head. That's tight. It's what we have. Unless you want to wait until Kozlov moves the painting again, which could be tomorrow or next week. Marco looked at her. Your call. We can wait for a better opportunity, or we move tonight while we know exactly where it is. Chloe thought about the decrypted files Alexis had pulled, active agent identities, people whose lives were at risk because her father had sold their information for money. Every hour that intelligence remained in Kozlov's possession was another hour those agents were compromised. We go tonight, she said. What do we need? The next 2 hours were preparation. Marco assembled equipment, lockpicks, electronic bypass tools, cameras, the works. Chloe changed into dark clothes that allowed movement, checked the compact pistol Marco insisted she carry. The weight of it was still foreign, but her hands knew what to do now. Muscle memory from dozens of training sessions. Alexis would run support from the house, monitoring hotel security feeds and coordinating their entry and exit. She'd already hacked into the hotel's network. Apparently that was the easy part. Camera loops are ready, she said, fingers dancing across keyboards. When you're in position, I can give you a 30-second window where security sees recorded footage instead of live feed. After that, you're on your own, looping longer triggers automated alerts. 30 seconds to reach the service elevator and disappear from the lobby cameras. Marco checked his watch. We move at midnight. Shift change for hotel security. Maximum confusion. They left at 11:30, taking separate vehicles and different routes. Marco drove while Chloe mentally rehearsed the plan. Service entrance, maintenance corridor, elevator to 17, distraction, entry, theft, escape. Simple in theory. In practice, any step could go catastrophically wrong. The Westin waterfront loomed against the night sky, all glass and steel and expense. They parked 2 blocks away in a public garage, approached on foot. The service entrance was on the north side, used by staff and deliveries, exactly as unobtrusive as Alexis had described. Marco's comm clicked. Camera loop in 3, 2, 1, mark. They moved. The service door was locked, but not seriously. Marco had it open in seconds. Inside, the maintenance corridor was exactly as the schematic showed. Concrete, fluorescent lights, the utilitarian guts of luxury hospitality. They moved fast, found the service elevator, hit the button for 17. Loop is holding, Alexis said through the comm. You're clear to the target floor. Fire alarm triggers in 4 minutes. The elevator climbed. Chloe's heart rate was elevated but controlled. This was just another drill, another scenario Marco had run her through, except this time failure meant bullets and prison instead of bruises and criticism. 17th floor. The doors opened onto a service corridor that ran parallel to the guest hallways. Through a door marked staff only, they could access the main corridor where Kozlov's suite was located. 2 minutes to fire alarm, Alexis said. Security shows 4 guards in the corridor, 2 inside the suite. When the alarm hits, protocol is partial evacuation. They'll move Kozlov, but leave guards on the suite. So we deal with the guards, Marco said quietly. He looked at Chloe. Non-lethal, if possible. These are hired security, not the actual criminals. Understood. 1 minute. Get into position. They moved to the staff door, waited in the silence that preceded chaos. Chloe could hear her own breathing, feel the gun's weight at her hip, taste adrenaline like copper in her mouth. The fire alarm shrieked. Immediately, voices erupted in the corridor. Marco cracked the door. Kozlov's security was mobilizing, talking rapidly in Russian, 2 of them escorting someone toward the elevators. The other 2 remained at the suite entrance, weapons visible now that pretense was gone. Guards are staying put, Marco said. We go through them or we don't go at all. Chloe pulled out a small device Alexis had provided, a sonic emitter that would disable the motion sensors temporarily. She tossed it down the corridor. It clattered, drew the guards' attention. They moved toward it, weapons raised. Marco moved faster. He came around the corner low and fast, hit the first guard with a strike to the solar plexus that folded him. The second guard turned, bringing his weapon up, but Chloe was already there. She grabbed his wrist, twisted exactly as Marco had taught her, used his momentum against him. The gun clattered away. Her elbow found his temple and he dropped. 10 seconds. Both guards down, unconscious but alive. Suite door, Marco said, already working the lock. It was electronic, sophisticated, but he had bypass tools that were more sophisticated. The lock clicked. They were in. The presidential suite was absurdly luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, art on the walls. And there, in a climate-controlled case in the sitting area, the painting they'd tracked from the auction. Chloe photographed it from every angle, while Marco checked for additional security measures. No alarms, no additional sensors. Kozlov's people had relied on the guards and the building's security. Mistake. Got it, Chloe said, finishing documentation. Marco carefully removed the painting from its case. It was smaller than it had looked at the auction, maybe 2 feet square. Worth a fortune legitimately. Worth more for what was hidden in its authentication data. Behind them, voices in the corridor. Russian, rapid fire, angry. They found the guards, Marco said, moving toward the window. Plan B. Plan B was the front door. Front door's compromised. We go out the window. Chloe looked at the window, then down 17 floors to the street. You're insane. I'm prepared. Marco was already pulling equipment from his bag, a compact rappelling setup, military grade. He secured it to the balcony railing, tested the anchor. You first. I'll cover. Marco Schmuss. Move, Chloe. She moved. Over the railing, onto the exterior balcony that was absolutely not designed for this. Marco wrapped the rappel line around her in a configuration she barely understood, showed her how to control descent. Push off. Control your speed with this hand, don't look down. The door to the suite exploded inward. Guards poured through, saw them, shouted. Chloe jumped. The descent was controlled falling, terror and physics wrapped in nylon rope. She hit the balcony 2 floors down harder than intended, rolled, came up moving. Above, gunfire. Marco returning fire, giving her time. Then he was over the rail too, descending fast, the painting strapped to his back in a protective case. More gunfire from above. Someone was leaning over, shooting down. Bullets sparked off the building's facade. Marco hit the balcony beside her. Keep moving! They went down 2 more floors before Marco pulled them through a window he'd already jimmied open. Inside someone's dark hotel room, mercifully empty. Through the room, into the corridor, toward the emergency stairs. Hotel security was everywhere now, responding to the fire alarm and the shots. Marco and Chloe blended into the evacuation chaos. Just 2 more guests fleeing danger, nothing suspicious about them at all except for the painting-sized case Marco carried. They hit the street with a crowd of confused hotel guests. Sirens were converging, fire department, police, the whole response apparatus. In the chaos, they disappeared down a side street, moving fast but not running, just 2 people leaving a dangerous situation. 3 blocks away, they finally stopped in an alley. Chloe was breathing hard, adrenaline crashing. Marco checked the painting case, intact, undamaged. That was insane, Chloe said. That was Thursday night. Wait until you see what Friday brings. Marco keyed his comm. Alexis, we're clear. Package secured. Heading back now. Copy that. And guys, you just made national news. Someone filmed the shootout from the street. It's already on social media. Chloe's stomach dropped. How bad? Bad enough that Kozlov can't pretend this was nothing, and good enough that everyone's asking questions about why there was a gunfight over a painting. Alexis sounded almost cheerful. This is going to force their hand. They'll have to move fast or risk exposure, which means they'll come after us hard, Marco said. We need to get this painting analyzed and the evidence published before they can silence us. They made it back to the house without incident, but the tension was a living thing. Every car that passed could be pursuit. Every shadow could be an ambush. By the time they were inside with the doors locked and alarms set, Chloe felt like she'd aged a year. Alexis had the painting out of its case and under examination within minutes. She photographed the authentication certificate, pulled the digital files, started running decryption protocols. This is going to take a few hours, she said. The encryption on this one is different. Newer algorithms, additional security layers. Kozlov must have paid premium for whatever intelligence this contains. So we wait, Chloe said. We prep, Marco corrected. This just became a race. Kozlov knows we have the painting. He'll connect it to the gallery theft eventually if he hasn't already. And your father will realize his network is compromised. They're going to come at us with everything. Let them come. We have evidence. We have proof. We have encrypted data that takes hours to break, and a stolen painting that makes us thieves. Until we can prove what's in those files and publish it where it can't be suppressed, we're just criminals they can eliminate quietly. Marco pulled up news feeds on his phone. The hotel shootout was everywhere. Blurry footage of figures rappelling down the building, security rushing, the chaos of evacuation. They can't identify us from this, Chloe said, looking at the footage. Not yet, but they'll try. Facial recognition, traffic cameras, witness interviews. We bought time, not safety. Marco set down his phone. Here's what happens next. Alexis finishes the decryption. We compile everything, the gallery documents, the decrypted intelligence, the painting, all of it, into a comprehensive package. Then we publish simultaneously to multiple outlets with copies stored in locations they can't reach. Journalists, FBI, CIA, congressional oversight committees, foreign press. Make it too distributed to contain. And then? Then we run. Because even after it's public, they'll want revenge. Your father doesn't strike me as the forgiving type. Chloe thought about her father's face at the auction, his casual authority as he committed treason in formal wear. Marco was right. Men like that didn't accept defeat gracefully. They'd come after her with everything, law and outlaw both. I'm not running for the rest of my life, she said quietly. After we publish, after the evidence is out, I want it finished, completely. Meaning what? Meaning my father needs to face what he's done, publicly, personally. Not just arrested, exposed. I want him to stand in front of cameras and answer for every life he endangered, every secret he sold, every person he betrayed. Chloe met Marco's eyes. Including me. Marco was quiet for a moment. That's not revenge. That's justice. You sure you can handle the difference? I've had 2 weeks to think about it. I don't want him dead. I want him destroyed. I want everyone who trusted him to see exactly what he is. That's worth more than a bullet. Harder to arrange than a bullet, too. Once this goes public, he'll lawyer up, claim ignorance, blame underlings. Politicians are good at surviving scandals. Not this scandal. Not with the evidence we have. Chloe pulled up the decrypted files Alexis had already processed. He sold agent identities. Those agents have families, colleagues, people who trusted the government to protect them. When they find out a senator compromised them for money, there won't be anywhere for him to hide. You really have changed, Marco said. There was something like respect in his voice. The girl who ran through the rain in a wedding dress would have wanted him to suffer. You want him to face consequences. That's different. That girl died in a car crash 2 weeks ago. I'm whatever came after, Alexis called from the other room. First layer's cracked. You two need to see this. They crowded around her monitor. The decrypted files were intelligence briefs, recent ones dated within the last month. Operational details for covert assets in Eastern Europe. Names, locations, cover identities. The kind of information that got people killed. This is active, Alexis said, her voice tight. These operations are ongoing. If this intelligence has been in Kozlov's hands for more than a few days, those agents are compromised, Marco finished. This isn't just historical crimes. This is current operational security breach. Chloe felt sick. Her father had done this, had sold living, breathing people to hostile intelligence services. How many of them were already dead? How many would die before this could be stopped? We need to warn them, she said. The CIA, whoever runs these operations, they need to know their people are exposed. The second we make contact, we're revealing ourselves. Your father's people will know we're alive and active. Marco's expression was grim. But you're right. Those agents' lives are worth more than our operational security. I'll make the contact, Alexis said. I've got intelligence community connections who can route this through secure channels. Give me an hour to set up a dead drop, and I can get this information to people who can act on it without revealing the source. Do it, Chloe said immediately. I don't care what it costs us. We don't let people die to protect ourselves. Marco nodded agreement. Meanwhile, we keep working. How many more files can you decrypt before dawn? All of them if I don't sleep, which I won't. Alexis was already typing. Go rest. Both of you. You look like death warmed over, and tomorrow's going to be worse. Chloe wanted to argue, but recognized the truth. She was exhausted, running on fumes and determination. Marco looked better, but not by much. They needed rest before the final push. She made it upstairs. Barely. The shower was hot enough to hurt, washing away sweat and fear and the lingering adrenaline crash. By the time she fell into bed, it was past 3 in the morning. 4 hours until Marco would wake her for final preparations. 4 hours to sleep before they burned her father's world to the ground. She managed 3. At 6:30, voices woke her. Urgent, tense. Chloe grabbed the gun from her nightstand, always there now, always loaded, and moved downstairs carefully. Marco and Alexis were in the study, both staring at a laptop with identical expressions of shock. What happened? Chloe asked. Marco turned the screen toward her. News website, breaking story, headline in bold. Senator's daughter alive. Spotted at hotel during shootout. Below it, a photo. Grainy, clearly enhanced from security footage, but unmistakable. Chloe's face, caught by a camera she hadn't seen, facial recognition software matching her to official records despite the disguise. How? Her voice came out hoarse. Kozlov's people must have pulled footage and run it through serious analysis software, the kind that can see through makeup and altered features. Alexis pulled up more articles. The story was spreading, social media, news outlets, conspiracy forums. The senator's daughter, supposedly dead, caught stealing from a Russian oligarch. You're famous, wrong kind of famous. Chloe sat down hard. This changed everything. No more hiding, no more element of surprise. Her father knew she was alive, knew she was coming for him. Statement from Senator Evans's office, Marco read from another article. Claims his daughter is clearly suffering from mental distress, possibly Stockholm syndrome from unknown captors. He's calling for her safe return and promising she'll receive the help she needs. He's framing me as a victim, Chloe said, understanding the strategy immediately. Crazy, manipulated, not responsible for my actions. That way, anything I say can be dismissed as delusion or coercion. It's actually smart, Alexis admitted. Turns you into a sympathetic figure while preemptively discrediting your testimony. Any evidence you present becomes tainted. Did you steal it, or were you forced to by your captors? Then we don't rely on my testimony. We rely on the evidence itself. Chloe stood, mind racing. The decrypted files, the authentication records, the network connections, none of that needs me to be credible. It stands on its own. Except we're thieves now, criminals. The painting is stolen property, the gallery documents were taken illegally, and you're wanted for questioning at minimum. Marco's expression was dark. Your father's about to weaponize the legal system against us. Arrest warrants, surveillance, the whole apparatus of law enforcement looking for you. How long until they trace us here? Hours, maybe less. I've kept this house clean, but if they're serious about finding you, they'll run through my known associates and properties. We need to move. Where? Somewhere they won't look, somewhere we can finish the work and publish before they can stop us. Marco was already packing equipment. I've got a safe house outside the city, remote, secure, off any official records. We relocate there, finish the decryption, compile the evidence package, and release it simultaneously to every outlet that matters. What about me? Alexis asked. I'm burned too. They'll connect me to you eventually. You come with us. We're all in this together now. Marco looked between them. This just became a siege, us against everyone your father can mobilize. So we move fast, work fast, and hit them before they can coordinate a response. They packed in 20 minutes, computers, files, equipment, weapons. Everything that mattered fit in Marco's van and Alexis's car. As they loaded the last boxes, Chloe took one final look at the house that had been her sanctuary and training ground. 2 weeks ago, she'd stumbled in here bleeding and desperate. Now she was leaving as someone else entirely, someone dangerous, determined, beyond her father's control. The drive north took 2 hours through back roads and small towns that barely qualified as destinations. Marco's safe house turned out to be a cabin in western Massachusetts, deep in forest, accessible only by a dirt road that probably washed out in heavy rain. Not much to look at, Marco said, unlocking the door. But it's secure. No neighbors, no surveillance, no connection to my official identity. Inside was basic but functional. Generator for power, satellite internet, enough supplies to last weeks if necessary. They set up a new command center at the kitchen table. Laptops, files, evidence spread out like pieces of a puzzle waiting for assembly. Alexis, finish the decryption, Marco said. Everything. Prioritize nothing. I want the complete picture. Chloe, you and I are writing the story. Comprehensive timeline, connecting every piece of evidence, making it impossible to deny or dismiss. They worked. Hours passed in focused intensity. Alexis's fingers flew across keyboards, breaking encryption and pulling files. Marco compiled documentation with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Chloe wrote, organizing years of conspiracy into coherent narrative. By evening, they had it. 18 months of intelligence trafficking, documented with dates and dollar amounts. Names of every player. Her father, Kozlov, Whitmore, the gallery directors, the shipping executives. Proof of embedded data in art authentication records. Decrypted intelligence showing exactly what was sold and to whom. Agent names, operational details, classified briefings, all of it exposed in meticulous detail. This is bulletproof, Marco said, reviewing the package. Not just criminal prosecution. This is treason, conspiracy, espionage. Multiple life sentences for everyone involved. Now we publish, Chloe said. They'd prepared the distribution list over the past hours. 37 recipients, major news outlets, investigative journalists, law enforcement agencies, congressional oversight committees, international press. Each would receive the complete package simultaneously, making suppression impossible. Once we send this, there's no taking it back, Marco warned. Your father will know immediately. He'll come after us with everything. Let him come. I'm done hiding. Chloe's finger hovered over the send button. This is for every person he betrayed, every agent he sold out, every life he destroyed for money and power. She pressed send. The emails dispatched in a cascade. 37 packages launching simultaneously into the digital void. Within seconds, delivery confirmation started appearing. The evidence was out, distributed beyond retrieval, heading toward inboxes of people who could amplify it to millions. Now we wait for the explosion, Alexis said. They didn't wait long. 20 minutes later, news alerts started firing. Breaking news banners, push notifications, the story catching fire across media. Senator implicated in espionage ring, classified intelligence sold to foreign powers. Evans' conspiracy exposed. The phone in Chloe's burner device, one Marco had given her for emergencies, started ringing. Unknown number. She looked at Marco, who nodded. She answered on speaker. Chloe, her father's voice. Controlled, but she could hear the fury underneath. We need to talk, face to face. Name the place. You tried to kill me. I tried to protect you from getting involved in things you didn't understand. Everything that's happened, the car accident, your disappearance, it was meant to keep you safe. Safe? You planned my murder at my own wedding. I heard you discuss it. You heard a conversation out of context, a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. Her father's voice shifted, trying for warmth. Sweetheart, please, whatever these people have told you, whatever they've convinced you to believe, it's not real. You're being used. Let me help you. The evidence is public. Encrypted intelligence, decrypted and distributed. Your network, your buyers, your treason, all of it documented. Silence. When her father spoke again, the pretense was gone. You've made a terrible mistake. That information is classified for reasons you can't comprehend. You've compromised national security, endangered lives. You sold agent identities to hostile intelligence services. You took bribes from foreign governments. You committed treason for 18 months. Chloe's voice was steady. I didn't endanger anyone. You did, and now everyone knows. They'll never believe you over me. I'm a United States Senator with 30 years of public service. You're a confused young woman who's been radicalized by criminals. This narrative ends with you in psychiatric care and your accomplices in prison. That might work if the evidence was just my testimony, but it's not. It's documents, encrypted files, financial records. It doesn't need me to be credible. It is credible. Another pause. Where are you? Somewhere you'll never find me. But don't worry, we'll meet again. In court, probably. I'm planning to testify at your trial. Chloe ended the call. Her hands were shaking. That was her father's voice. The voice that had read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike and told her he was proud of her. The same voice that had ordered her death like a dinner reservation. He's rattled, Marco said, trying to control the narrative and failing. Good. The news coverage intensified through the evening. Reporters were calling the intelligence community for confirmation. Congressional leaders were demanding investigations. International allies were expressing concern about compromised operations. Senator Richard Evans released a statement denying everything, claiming the documents were forgeries, that he was the victim of an elaborate frame job by political enemies and foreign actors seeking to destabilize American democracy. Nobody was buying it. By midnight, the first arrests were made. David Chen, caught trying to board a flight to Hong Kong with falsified documents. Maria Castellano, detained at her restoration studio with evidence of document forgery. Lawrence Ashford, arrested at the gallery after FBI raids found encrypted communications and financial records. The network was collapsing. Whitmore's disappeared, Alexis reported, monitoring news and law enforcement channels. Private jet filed flight plan for the Cayman Islands but never departed. Either he's running or he's already run. And Kozlov, diplomatic immunity. He's holed up in the Russian consulate. Can't be touched legally, but his reputation's destroyed. Every intelligence agency in the world knows he's a broker now. What about my father? Chloe asked. Marco pulled up a live news feed. The Capitol building, late night, reporters everywhere. He's being questioned by the FBI. Not arrested yet. Senatorial privilege buys him that much. But his office has been sealed. His account's frozen. The Senate Ethics Committee called an emergency session. Chloe watched her father emerge from the building, surrounded by lawyers and security. He looked older suddenly, the authority and confidence stripped away. Just a man facing consequences he'd thought he was immune to. He'll claim ignorance, Chloe said. Blame subordinates, say he was deceived, play the victim. He can claim whatever he wants. The evidence tells a different story. Marco closed the laptop. It's over. Your father's finished, his network's collapsing, and the truth is public. You won. Chloe should have felt triumphant. Should have felt satisfied watching her father's empire crumble. Instead, she just felt tired. I didn't want to win, she said quietly. I wanted my family to be real. I wanted the life I thought I had to actually exist. I know, but that life was always an illusion. At least now you're free of it. The next days were a blur of developments. More arrests as the investigation widened. Thomas Whitmore turned himself in, cutting a deal to testify against the others. Viktor Kozlov was declared persona non grata, expelled from the country. The State Department launched damage control for the compromised intelligence. Senator Richard Evans was formally charged with espionage, conspiracy, bribery, and a dozen other counts that carried life sentences. His mugshot appeared on every news outlet, no longer the distinguished senator, just another criminal in booking photos. Chloe watched it all from the safety of the cabin, processing the strange reality of her father's public destruction. She'd done this, set it in motion, provided the evidence, burned everything he'd built. It should have felt like justice. It mostly felt empty. What happens now? She asked Marco on the fourth day after publication. To me, I mean, I'm still technically wanted for theft, breaking and entering, everything we did to get the evidence. FBI's indicated they're willing to offer immunity in exchange for testimony. You'd have to cooperate with the investigation, appear in court, the whole process. But they're not interested in prosecuting you. You're the whistleblower who exposed treason. And after? What's my life look like when this is over? Marco was quiet for a moment. Whatever you want it to look like. New identity if you want to disappear. Or you stay visible, become the face of this story, maybe write a book or work with advocacy groups. You've got options. Do I? Chloe looked at him. I died 2 weeks ago. Chloe Evans, senator's daughter, perfect bride, everything I was. She's gone. I don't know who I am without that life. You're someone who survived betrayal and fought back. Someone who chose justice over safety. Someone who learned to be dangerous when necessary. Marco met her eyes. That's not nothing. That's someone worth being. Is it enough to build a life on? I don't know. But it's more than most people get. The chance to choose who they become instead of having it chosen for them. A week after publication, the immunity agreement came through. Chloe would testify in exchange for full legal protection. The trial would be months away. These things move slowly, especially with senators and treason charges. But her participation was secured. She returned to Boston under FBI protection, gave her deposition, began the long process of legal testimony. Reporters wanted interviews, publishers wanted book deals. Everybody wanted a piece of the story. Chloe declined most of it. She wasn't interested in being famous or celebrated. She just wanted it to be over. Marco stayed close during the process, providing security and advice and something like friendship. He was going back to his own life soon, whatever that looked like for a criminal with Marco's particular skills, but for now, he was there. I never thanked you properly, Chloe said one evening after a particularly brutal deposition, for saving my life, for everything after. You don't owe me thanks. We had a deal. You gave me information. I gave you protection. It was more than that. You gave me a chance to become someone who could fight back. Without you, I'd be dead or hiding forever. Marco smiled slightly. Without you, I'd have never had the satisfaction of watching a senator's empire collapse. So we're even. They weren't even, and both knew it, but some debts couldn't be quantified or repaid. The trial date was set for 6 months out. Chloe would have time to prepare, to process, to figure out what came after. Meanwhile, she found a small apartment in a neighborhood where nobody knew Senator Evans's daughter. Started using her middle name instead of Chloe. Took long walks where nobody recognized her. Slowly, carefully, she began building something new from the wreckage of everything she'd been. It wasn't perfect. Some days she woke up angry at everything she'd lost. Other days she missed the simplicity of ignorance, of not knowing the monsters hiding in her family. But she was alive, free, hers. And somewhere, in a prison cell awaiting trial, her father was learning what it meant to lose everything while the world watched. That, Chloe decided, was justice enough. The apartment was small, but it was hers, really hers. Not her father's property, or Marco's safe house, or the FBI's protective custody. Just a third-floor walk-up in Cambridge with creaky floors and a view of somebody else's fire escape. Chloe had signed the lease using her middle name, paid first and last with money Marco had helped her access from accounts her father didn't know existed. Emergency funds her mother had set up years ago, before she'd become complicit in everything else. That money felt clean enough to use. Everything else her parents had touched was tainted. 3 months had passed since the story broke. 3 months of depositions and interviews and legal proceedings that ground forward with bureaucratic inevitability. The trial was still 3 months away, but the investigation had expanded beyond her father to implicate dozens of others. Politicians, intelligence officers, corporate executives. The conspiracy had roots deeper than anyone had initially realized. Chloe's testimony was going to be the centerpiece. The senator's daughter, betrayed and left for dead, exposing the entire network. Prosecutors loved the narrative. It was dramatic, sympathetic, exactly the kind of story that would dominate news cycles and ensure convictions. She hated every minute of it. Not the justice part. She wanted her father and everyone involved to face consequences. But the performance of it, the constant retelling of her trauma for legal record and public consumption, the way lawyers on both sides tried to shape her into whatever character served their case. Victim, whistleblower, damaged woman seeking revenge, brave survivor. Nobody seemed interested in the fact that she was just someone trying to process betrayal while living in the wreckage of everything she'd believed. Her phone buzzed. Marco. They'd maintained contact throughout the legal process, though he'd stepped back to let her navigate the official channels without his criminal associations complicating things. He checked in weekly, making sure she was safe and sane and not doing anything stupid. "You eating?" he asked without preamble when she answered. "Hello to you too. And yes, I'm eating." "Sleeping?" "Enough." That's not an answer. A pause. "I'm in town. Dinner?" Chloe looked around her apartment. Empty takeout containers, legal documents spread across every surface, the kind of isolation that came from cutting ties with everyone from her old life. "Yeah, dinner sounds good." They met at a small Italian place in the North End, the kind of restaurant that had been there for 40 years and would probably be there for 40 more. Marco looked different in civilian clothes without the operational tension. Just a guy in jeans and a leather jacket. Nobody's criminal mastermind. "You look terrible," he said, sitting across from her. "Thanks. You're really good at this supportive friend thing." "I'm not your friend. I'm the person who taught you to shoot and helped you fake your death. We're something else entirely." But he smiled when he said it, took the edge off. "Seriously, though, when's the last time you slept through the night?" Chloe didn't answer because they both knew. The nightmares had started a month ago. Her father's voice in the garden, the car leaving the road, Thomas's perfect smile that had never been real. She'd wake up gasping, convinced she was back in that moment when her life had shattered. "The trial's in 3 months," she said instead. "Once that's over, I can start processing. Until then, I'm just trying to hold it together long enough to testify." You don't have to testify. You've given depositions, provided evidence. The prosecution has enough without you taking the stand." "They want me there. The jury needs to see the human cost, hear directly from someone he hurt. And I need—" Chloe stopped. "I need to look him in the eye when it ends, when he's convicted and sentenced and destroyed. I need him to see me still standing." Marco studied her across the table. "Revenge or closure?" "Both. Neither. I don't know anymore." She pushed food around her plate. "Does it get easier, living with what we did?" "What we did was expose criminals. That's not something you need to live with. That's something you live because of. We saved lives by pulling those intelligence files and warning the agency. We stopped an espionage network that would have kept selling secrets for years. You did that. By becoming a criminal myself, breaking and entering, theft, assault. Means to an end. You were granted immunity because what you exposed was more important than how you exposed it. That's the legal system acknowledging you made the right call." Marco leaned forward. "But if you're asking whether I sleep soundly at night despite a career of questionable legality? No, I don't. I sleep like someone who's made hard choices and accepted the consequences. That's different than peace, but it's sustainable." The waiter brought wine. Chloe drank hers faster than was probably advisable. "My mother wants to see me." Marco's expression didn't change, but something sharpened in his eyes. "Your mother who helped build the network that nearly got you killed?" She claimed she didn't know about the murder part, that my father handled enforcement and she just provided the art authentication infrastructure. She's cooperating with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. Chloe's voice was flat. Her lawyer called. She wants to apologize, explain her side, mother-daughter reconciliation before the trial. "What do you want?" "I want to not care. I want her to just be a stranger who did terrible things instead of my mother who did terrible things. But I can't separate it. Every good memory is poisoned now by knowing what she was doing behind the scenes." "So don't see her. You don't owe her forgiveness or closure or whatever she's asking for. She made choices. You're living with the consequences. That debt doesn't run both ways." Chloe appreciated Marco's bluntness. Everyone else, FBI agents, prosecutors, the court-appointed therapist, they all soft-pedaled, spoke in careful language about healing and processing and family dynamics. Marco just said what was true. Her mother had chosen conspiracy over daughter, and Chloe owed her nothing. "I'm going to see her," Chloe said. "Not for her sake, for mine. I need to understand how someone becomes that person, how you love someone and betray them simultaneously. Maybe it'll help me understand how I didn't see it." "You didn't see it because you trusted the people who should have been trustworthy. That's not a failure. That's being a functional human being. They failed. not you. It was the same thing the therapist said, just in Marco's characteristically blunt phrasing. Chloe knew intellectually he was right. Emotionally, she still felt stupid for missing every sign, every clue, every moment when she could have questioned and didn't. The visit was scheduled for the following week. Her mother was in a minimum security facility, white-collar criminal lockup, still awaiting trial, but held without bail due to flight risk. Chloe went through security with the mechanical numbness that had become her default state for difficult things. Patricia Evans looked smaller than Chloe remembered. Prison clothes instead of designer brands, no makeup, hair gray at the roots where expensive coloring had grown out. She looked like what she was, a woman facing consequences after years of avoiding them. They sat across from each other in a visitation room with a guard watching from a discreet distance. For a long moment, neither spoke. "What do you say to the mother who helped orchestrate your murder?" "You look well," Patricia finally said. "Considering everything, I'm alive. That's probably more than you expected." A flinch, small but visible. "I never wanted you hurt. You have to believe that." "I don't have to believe anything. I heard the conversation. I know what was planned." Chloe kept her voice level. "You want to explain how you loved me while setting up the authentication paperwork that would have facilitated my murder?" "It wasn't supposed to go that far. Your father said it was just an insurance policy, a backup plan, if you somehow became a problem. But you were never supposed to find out, never supposed to be threatened." Patricia's hands twisted together on the table. "By the time I realized how deep it went, how serious the consequences were, I was already implicated. Leaving would have exposed everything. So you stayed, kept building the network, kept facilitating intelligence trafficking, kept—" Chloe stopped herself. Yelling wouldn't help. "When did it start?" 15 years ago. Small things at first. Your father needed authentication for a donation that wasn't quite legitimate, paperwork to move a piece that had unclear provenance. I thought it was just politics, the kind of corners everyone cuts. Then it was hiding assets from disclosure laws. Then it was moving pieces for donors who wanted privacy. Each step seemed reasonable until I looked back and realized I was facilitating money laundering. And you didn't stop. I was scared. Your father's career was rising. We had a certain life, certain expectations. And he was bringing in foreign contacts, people who weren't just wealthy but connected. Intelligence services, oligarchs, people who didn't accept no gracefully. Patricia met Chloe's eyes. "I told myself I was protecting our family by going along, that if I cooperated, he'd never have reason to hurt you or use you as leverage. Instead, you both used me as the perfect cover. Senator's daughter, clean reputation, access to the right networks." The bitterness in Chloe's voice surprised her. "I was never your daughter. I was an asset." "That's not true." "It is true. You raised me to be exactly the kind of person who'd sign authentication documents without questioning them, who'd trust family over instinct, who'd be the perfect unwitting accomplice. Every value you taught me was designed to make me exploitable." Patricia's face crumpled. "I loved you. I still love you. Everything I did was to keep you safe from the parts of this you didn't need to know. You kept me ignorant. That's different than safe. Safe would have been refusing to participate. Safe would have been going to authorities. Safe would have been protecting me from the conspiracy instead of making me part of it. I was weak. I was scared. I made terrible choices because I couldn't see another way." Patricia reached across the table, stopped when Chloe pulled back. "But I am truly deeply sorry for what we put you through, for the danger, the betrayal, the trauma. If I could go back—" "You can't. None of us can." Chloe stood. "You're going to prison. My father's going to prison. Thomas, Ashford, Chen, all of them. The network's destroyed, and I'm the one who destroyed it. That has to be enough because it's all we get." "Chloe, please. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but you're right. You don't deserve it. And I don't have it to give. Not yet. Maybe not ever." Chloe headed toward the exit, then stopped. "The woman who taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and made me believe in family, I loved that woman. But she was never real, was she? Just a performance to keep me compliant. She was real. I was real. I was just also someone who made unforgivable choices. Patricia's voice broke. Both can be true. Chloe left without responding because she didn't have an answer to that. Maybe her mother was right. People contained multitudes, could be loving and monstrous simultaneously, but understanding that didn't make it hurt less. Outside, Marco was waiting in his car. He'd insisted on driving her, being nearby in case she needed extraction or support or someone to stop her from doing something she'd regret. She slid into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead. "How'd it go?" he asked. She apologized, explained, claimed she was protecting me by keeping me ignorant. Standard narcissist playbook, victimhood and justification wrapped in tearful confession. "You believe her?" "I believe she's sorry she got caught. I believe she loved me in whatever way someone that fundamentally selfish can love anyone. I believe she's terrified of prison and what comes after." Chloe finally looked at him. "I don't believe she'd do anything differently if given the chance. She'd just be more careful." Marco started the car. "So where does that leave you?" "Moving forward without her. She'll serve her time, get out eventually, live with her choices. I'll testify, watch them all get sentenced, and then I'll build something that has nothing to do with who they are or what they did." "That's a good plan. You figured out what that something is?" Chloe had been thinking about it during the long nights when sleep wouldn't come. What does someone do after surviving the unsurvivable? After exposing corruption and escaping murder and testifying at a treason trial? "I'm going back to school," she said. "Law degree, maybe? Or criminal justice. Something that lets me help people who got used by systems designed to protect the powerful." "You want to be a lawyer?" "I want to understand how people like my father operate legally for years before anyone stops them. I want to know how to build cases that actually stick, how to navigate the system so victims don't get crushed by bureaucracy and money and influence." She paused. "You taught me how to fight physically. I need to learn how to fight institutionally." Marco smiled. "That's a long game. Years of school, bar exams, working your way through the system." "I've got time, and I've learned patience." The trial began on a Monday in October. The courthouse was a circus, reporters everywhere, protesters and supporters both. Security so tight you needed clearance just to enter the building. Chloe arrived early with her FBI escort, entered through a side door to avoid cameras. The courtroom was smaller than she expected. Wood paneling, stern portraits of judges long dead, American flag in the corner. The jury box was full of ordinary citizens who'd been pulled from their lives to decide the fate of powerful people. They looked nervous. Her father entered in handcuffs that were removed before he sat at the defense table. He'd aged in the months since arrest, gray hair thinner, face drawn. The vitality that had powered 30 years of politics diminished. But he sat straight, projecting dignity, the performance still running even now. He didn't look at Chloe. She was grateful for that. The prosecution's opening statement was comprehensive and damning. They laid out 18 months of intelligence trafficking, named every co-conspirator, detailed the millions in bribes, and the incalculable damage to national security. They promised to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Senator Richard Evans had systematically betrayed his country for profit. The defense's opening was predictable. Their client had been deceived by trusted associates, had no knowledge of the illegal activities occurring around him, was himself a victim of an elaborate conspiracy by foreign actors and political enemies. Look at his record of service, his character, his patriotism. Would such a man commit treason? Yes, Chloe thought. Absolutely yes, because men like her father believed rules were for other people. Her testimony came in the second week. The prosecution had saved her for maximum impact, the sympathetic victim, the brave whistleblower, the daughter betrayed. Chloe wore a simple dress, minimal jewelry, nothing flashy. The jury needed to see her as real, relatable, someone they could believe and trust. She was sworn in, took the stand, and the lead prosecutor began with softballs. Her name, age, background, establishing her as Richard Evans's daughter, Patricia Evans's daughter, someone who'd grown up inside the conspiracy without knowing it. "When did you first learn about your father's activities?" the prosecutor asked. "The night of my engagement party. I overheard a conversation between my father and two other men discussing my wedding, specifically that I would be killed after the marriage was finalized and certain art transfers were complete." The courtroom stirred. This was new testimony, details that hadn't been in the depositions. The prosecutor walked her through it, what she'd heard, who was present. The specific plan to make her death look like an accident. What did you do after hearing this conversation? I ran. I stole a car and tried to escape. Men pursued me, armed men who shot at me. My car crashed. I fled on foot and ended up at Marco Ravellini's property, where I sought help. The defense objected when Marco's name came up. His criminal record, his lack of credibility. The judge overruled. Marco had been granted immunity same as Chloe. His testimony would be allowed. Chloe explained the 2 weeks of investigation, how they'd uncovered the art smuggling network and the embedded intelligence, how they'd broken into the gallery and the hotel, stolen evidence, decrypted the files. She didn't minimize or justify, just stated facts. They'd broken laws to expose greater crimes. The jury could decide if that was heroic or criminal. The cross-examination was brutal. The defense attorney was skilled, experienced in dismantling witnesses. He painted Chloe as mentally unstable, possibly suffering from delusions or false memories. Suggested Marco had manipulated her, that the conspiracy was fabricated by people with grudges against Senator Evans. Isn't it true you've been diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety following these alleged events? Yes, surviving murder attempts tends to be traumatic. And you're on medication for these conditions? Yes, which helps me function but doesn't make me delusional. The evidence exists independent of my testimony. Evidence you acquired through theft and breaking into secure facilities. Evidence that could have been fabricated or altered. The FBI verified every file. Independent forensic analysis confirmed the embedded data, the encryption, the intelligence content. I didn't fabricate anything. I exposed it. The attorney shifted tactics. You've received significant media attention for this case. Book deals have been offered, movie rights discussed. Isn't it possible your testimony is motivated by financial gain and publicity rather than truth? I've declined every book offer. I'm not interested in publicity. I'm interested in justice. My father tried to have me killed. That's not a delusion or a publicity stunt. That's attempted murder. Alleged attempted murder. You claim you overheard a conversation, but you have no recording, no witnesses, just your interpretation of words spoken in a garden at night. I know what I heard. You believe you know. But belief isn't proof, Miss Evans. The testimony lasted 2 days. Chloe held up through all of it. The aggressive questioning, the implication she was lying or crazy or attention-seeking. She stuck to facts, stayed calm, refused to be rattled. By the time she stepped down, she was exhausted but intact. Marco testified next. He was surprisingly credible on the stand, calm, detailed, willing to admit his own criminal history, but clear about the distinction between his activities and treason. The jury seemed to appreciate his bluntness, the way he didn't try to paint himself as a hero, just someone who'd recognized injustice and helped Chloe fight back. The trial stretched for 6 weeks. Expert witnesses testified about the intelligence damage. FBI agents walked through the investigation. Thomas Whitmore, granted immunity in exchange for testimony, admitted his family's role in the logistics network. Lawrence Ashford broke down on the stand, confessing to facilitating art authentication for smuggling purposes. Piece by piece, the prosecution built an overwhelming case. Not just preponderance of evidence, but mountains of it. Documents, recordings, financial records, encrypted files with decryption verified by multiple independent sources. The defense tried to poke holes, suggest reasonable doubt, but there was nothing reasonable about dismissing evidence this comprehensive. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Chloe waited in a hotel room with FBI protection, unable to eat or sleep or think about anything except those 12 strangers deciding her father's fate. And hers, in a way. Whatever verdict came down would define how the world understood this story. Heroic whistleblower exposing treason, or troubled daughter destroying her family with false accusations? The call came at 2 p.m. on day 3. Verdict reached. Return to court immediately. The courtroom was packed. Chloe sat with the prosecution team, hands clenched in her lap. Marco was in the gallery behind her. He'd stayed for the whole trial, his silent support more valuable than he probably realized. Alexis was there too, the cryptographer who'd helped break the encryption and testified as an expert witness. The jury filed in. None of them looked at the defense table. That was supposedly a bad sign if you were the defendant. Chloe's heart hammered. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. The foreperson stood. Chloe couldn't breathe. On the count of conspiracy to commit espionage, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order, but the damage was done. The first guilty verdict triggered a collapse of the remaining pretense. Chloe listened as the foreperson read through all 37 counts. Guilty on espionage. Guilty on bribery. Guilty on money laundering. Guilty on conspiracy. Guilty on obstruction of justice. Guilty on every single charge. Her father sat motionless at the defense table. The performance finally dropped. He looked old and beaten and small, nothing like the powerful senator who'd controlled so much for so long. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The prosecution was asking for consecutive sentences on the major counts, life in prison, effectively. No parole, no possibility of early release. Richard Evans would die in federal prison, his legacy destroyed, his name synonymous with betrayal. Chloe should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt hollow. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Chloe's lawyer made a brief statement: gratitude for the jury's service, confidence in the justice system, hope that this verdict brought closure to everyone affected by Senator Evans's crimes. Chloe stood beside her, said nothing, let the lawyer handle the performance. Marco found her afterward, away from cameras. You did it. He's going away forever. The network's destroyed. Everyone involved is facing justice. Why don't I feel better? Because revenge is satisfying in theory, but complicated in practice. You didn't just take down an enemy, you destroyed your father. That's heavy regardless of whether he deserved it. Chloe looked back at the courthouse. He did deserve it. But yeah, it's heavy. They walked in silence for several blocks, escaping the media circus. Finally, Chloe asked the question that had been building throughout the trial. What happens to you now, after all this? I go back to my life, keep my head down, avoid attention, continue operating in the spaces between legal and illegal. Marco shrugged. This was an outlier for me. Public exposure, government immunity, working alongside the FBI. I prefer shadows. You're good at shadows. Years of practice. But you're stepping into the light, testifying publicly, becoming the face of this case. That's the opposite of shadows. I don't want to be famous. I just want it to be over so I can figure out what comes next. What does come next? Chloe thought about her apartment, her plans for law school, the future she was trying to imagine that had nothing to do with her family's destruction. I keep moving forward. Go to school, build a career, help people who got used by systems that protect the powerful, create something good from all this wreckage. That's ambitious. I learned from someone who taught me that impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. Marco smiled, genuine warmth instead of the calculated versions she'd seen him use on others. You're going to be fine, Chloe. Better than fine. You're already someone most people couldn't become even with years of training. I had a good teacher. You had motivation and raw material. I just pointed you in useful directions. He stopped walking, turned to face her fully. You don't need me anymore. You're capable, dangerous when necessary, smart enough to navigate whatever comes next. So this is me stepping back. You've got my number if you need it, but you won't. You're already past the part where you needed saving. It felt like goodbye, even though he wasn't saying the word. Chloe understood. Marco operated in a world she was leaving behind. They'd been allies by necessity, partners in exposing conspiracy, but their paths diverged from here. He'd returned to his criminal enterprise, whatever that entailed. She'd returned to normal life, or something approximating it. Thank you, she said, meaning it completely. For everything. For saving me that first night, and for making me someone who didn't need saving anymore. Anytime. Well, not anytime. I'm trying to avoid high-profile treason cases going forward. But you know what I mean. Marco offered his hand. They shook formally, a strange bookend to the night she'd staggered into his house bleeding and desperate. He walked away first. Chloe watched him disappear into the city, this man who'd been criminal and teacher and something like friend. She'd probably never see him again. That felt right somehow. Their story was complete, their purpose fulfilled. What came after belonged to different narratives. The sentencing hearing was shorter than the trial, but no less intense. Victim impact statements from intelligence operatives whose identities had been compromised. Testimonies from agents whose careers and lives had been destroyed by the intelligence leaks. One by one, people stood and described how Senator Evans' greed had cost them everything. Chloe gave her own statement. She talked about betrayal, about what it meant to discover your family was willing to kill you for convenience, about the fear and anger and eventual determination that came from surviving what should have been fatal. She didn't ask for a specific sentence, just asked that the court recognize the full scope of harm caused by her father's choices. When she finished, she looked directly at her father for the first time since testimony had begun. He met her eyes finally, and for a moment she saw something, regret, maybe, or just fear of what was coming. She'd never know which, and ultimately it didn't matter. The judge sentenced Richard Evans to 75 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Combined sentences on all counts to be served consecutively. At 63 years old, he'd die behind bars. That was certain. Patricia Evans received 22 years for her role. Thomas Whitmore got 15. Lawrence Ashford got 12. David Chen got 18. Down the line, everyone involved received sentences that ensured they'd spend the best years of their remaining lives in prison. The conspiracy was over. The network destroyed. The justice system had worked exactly as it was designed to when evidence was overwhelming and crimes were undeniable. Chloe walked out of the courthouse for the final time into cold November air. The media was there again, but their interest was already waning. The story was told, the verdict delivered, the villains punished. America would move on to the next scandal, the next outrage, the next crisis. She was fine with that. She didn't want to be a permanent fixture of true crime documentaries and political analyses. She wanted to be ordinary again, or as ordinary as someone with her history could manage. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Chloe Evans? A woman's voice, professional and warm. Speaking. My name is Catherine Reeves. I run a nonprofit that helps whistleblowers navigate life after exposure, legal support, mental health resources, career counseling. I saw your testimony and wanted to reach out. No pressure, no obligation, but if you're interested in connecting with others who've been through similar experiences, we have a support network. Chloe had spent months isolated, convinced her experience was uniquely terrible. The idea that there were others, people who'd exposed corruption and survived the aftermath, was oddly comforting. I'd like that, she said. Yes, I'd like to connect. 6 months later, Chloe started law school at Georgetown. She'd chosen D.C. deliberately, close to power but not consumed by it, a place where she could study the systems that had failed and learn how to make them better. Her classmates knew who she was, the senator's daughter who'd brought down an espionage network. But after initial curiosity, they treated her normally. Just another student trying to understand the law. She was good at it. The same analytical skills that had helped her decode her father's conspiracy translated well to legal analysis. She excelled in criminal procedure and evidence classes, found herself drawn to courses on government accountability and whistleblower protections. In her second year, she started volunteering with Catherine's nonprofit, helping other whistleblowers navigate the legal and psychological aftermath of exposure. She understood what they were going through, the isolation, the second-guessing, the strange grief of losing everything familiar, even when that familiar had been toxic. "You're good at this," Catherine said, after Chloe had successfully helped a former defense contractor get immunity for exposing fraud. "You understand both sides, the systemic issues and the human cost. That's rare. I had good teachers. Some of them were criminals, but still good teachers. The criminal who helped you, Marco? Whatever happened to him? I don't know. He disappeared back into whatever world he came from. I think about reaching out sometimes, letting him know I'm okay. But that's not really our relationship. We were allies for a specific purpose. That purpose ended. Do you think you'll ever see him again?" Chloe considered it. In a city like D.C., in a world of gray areas and necessary evils, paths crossed in unexpected ways. Maybe. If I do, I'll thank him again. But I hope he's found whatever peace looks like for someone with his history. She didn't hear from Marco for 3 years. Then one afternoon, she got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Law school had taught her to be cautious about unexpected contacts. But something made her pick up. "Counselor Evans," Marco's voice said, warmth and amusement mixed. I hear you're graduating top of your class. Marco, how did you... Never mind, stupid question. You probably have surveillance on half of DC. Just the interesting parts. Congratulations on law school and on the advocacy work. I've been following your career. Following from a distance, you mean? You could have called any time in the last 3 years. I wanted you to build your life without associations that could complicate things. Criminal contacts don't look good on law school applications. A pause. But I'm in DC next week. Legitimate business, believe it or not. Dinner? They met at the same Italian place. Different city, but Marco apparently had a type. He looked the same, but somehow different. More relaxed, maybe. Less like someone constantly calculating angles. You've done well, he said after they'd ordered. Georgetown law, advocacy work, already being recruited by nonprofits and government agencies. You built exactly what you said you would. I had a good foundation. Turns out training in covert operations and criminal thinking translates surprisingly well to legal strategy. Chloe smiled. What about you? Still operating in those shadows you prefer? Still there, but with some evolution. Turns out exposing a senator's espionage network earned me certain reputations. People come to me now when they need problems solved, the kind of problems that exist in legal gray areas where traditional authorities can't or won't act. So you're like a criminal consultant. I prefer alternative solution specialist, but essentially, yes. I help people who've been failed by official channels. Sometimes that means finding evidence. Sometimes it means providing protection. Occasionally it means making problems disappear in ways that don't technically appear on any legal statutes. That sounds exactly like what you were doing before. True. But now I'm more selective. I only take cases where the alternatives are worse than my involvement. Gives me something like a moral framework. Chloe laughed. You've developed ethics. Let's not go crazy. I've developed boundaries. There's a difference. Marco's expression turned more serious. I actually called for a reason beyond reconnecting. I've got a case I think you'd find interesting. Young woman, mid-20s, daughter of a venture capitalist, who's using her trust fund as a front for money laundering. She discovered it, tried to go to authorities, got shut down because her father has connections. Now she's scared and alone and running out of options. Why are you telling me this? Because she needs legal advocacy and someone who understands what it's like to have family turn toxic. You're uniquely qualified. And because I think you're ready for this kind of work, helping people expose corruption even when official channels fail them. Chloe processed the offer. It was exactly the kind of case that drew her. Someone powerless against wealth and influence. Someone who needed a champion willing to fight dirty when necessary. You want me to represent her? I want you to meet her, hear her story, decide if it's worth your involvement. If yes, I can provide resources, evidence gathering, protection, whatever she needs that exists outside legal boundaries. You provide the legitimate legal strategy and representation. Between us, we might actually help her. It felt like coming full circle. 3 years ago, she'd been that desperate young woman with nowhere to turn. Now she was being offered the chance to be what she'd needed. An advocate willing to fight systems designed to protect the powerful. When can I meet her? Chloe asked. Marco smiled. Tomorrow, if you're free. She's at a safe location, staying low until we figure out next moves. They spent the rest of dinner discussing strategy, potential approaches, legal angles. It felt natural, falling back into the kind of planning they'd done while exposing her father's conspiracy. Except now Chloe brought legal expertise and institutional knowledge to complement Marco's operational skills. They made a good team. Still did. Over the next year, Chloe took on 3 more cases through Marco's referrals. Each one involved wealthy, connected people exploiting their power while their victims struggled to find justice through official channels. Each time, Chloe provided legal representation while Marco handled the aspects that couldn't be managed through traditional means. They won more than they lost. Not every case ended with perfect justice. Sometimes the best they could achieve was protection for the victim and exposure for the perpetrator. But it was progress, proof that the system could be made to work for the powerless when the right people pushed hard enough. Chloe passed the bar exam and joined a small firm specializing in whistleblower cases and government accountability. Her reputation grew. The senator's daughter turned advocate, someone who understood corruption from the inside and fought it from the outside. She testified before congressional committees about whistleblower protections. She wrote articles about systemic failures and oversight mechanisms. She built something meaningful from the wreckage of her old life. 5 years after her father's conviction, Chloe received notification that he'd requested a visitation. She hadn't seen him since sentencing, had no interest in reconciliation or forgiveness or whatever he was looking for. But curiosity made her accept. The federal prison was grim in the way all such places were, concrete and bars and the smell of institutional cleaning products. Her father was brought to the visitation room looking every one of his 68 years. Prison had aged him dramatically. They sat across from each other with nothing to say. Finally, he spoke. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For what I tried to do to you. For the betrayal. For failing to be the father you deserved." "Okay." Chloe's voice was flat. She'd processed her anger years ago in therapy. Now there was just distance. "I think about that night constantly. The conversation you overheard. If I could take it back, you can't. And honestly, I'm glad you can't. If I hadn't heard it, I'd still be ignorant, still be complicit without knowing it. You did me a favor by being honest about your intentions. Gave me a chance to escape. You destroyed everything I built. I exposed everything you built. There's a difference. You destroyed it by building something that deserved destruction." Chloe leaned forward. "I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here to tell you that I'm fine. Better than fine. I built a career helping people you would have crushed without thinking twice. Every case I win, every whistleblower I help, every corrupt system I help dismantle, that's my legacy. It's built on the opposite of everything you stood for. I'm glad you found purpose. Truly. You deserve better than what we gave you." "I know. That's why I made better for myself." She left after 20 minutes. Didn't promise to return. Probably wouldn't. There was nothing there for her anymore. No anger, no need for closure, no remaining connection. He was just a stranger serving time for crimes he'd committed. She'd moved past him years ago. Outside, Marco was waiting. He'd driven her, insisted on being present in case she needed support. "How'd it go?" "Fine. Empty. Exactly what I expected." Chloe got in the car. "He apologized. I didn't care. We're done." "Good. You deserve to be done with him." They drove in comfortable silence. Over the years, Marco had become something Chloe couldn't quite define. Not friend, not family, not colleague exactly. But someone who understood her in ways most people couldn't. Someone who'd been there for the worst moments and stuck around for the aftermath. "I've been thinking about expanding the work," Chloe said. "Not just individual cases, but systemic advocacy, policy reforms, oversight mechanisms, whistleblower protections that actually work, building infrastructure so people like us have better options than theft and criminal conspiracy." "That's ambitious. Also probably necessary. Would you be interested in participating? Your perspective, what you've learned operating outside legal boundaries, it's valuable for understanding why people need alternatives. You could consult, provide insight, help design systems that actually account for the gray areas." Marco was quiet for a long moment. "That would involve stepping into some legitimate spotlight, being publicly associated with advocacy work. It's not really my style. Neither was helping a senator's daughter expose a treason conspiracy. But you did it anyway." "Fair point," Marco smiled. "All right, I'm in, but I maintain my criminal side business. Can't go completely legitimate. Wouldn't know how to operate." "I wouldn't ask you to. We all operate best in our natural habitats. Mine's courtrooms and policy papers. Yours is shadows and questionable legality. Together we cover more ground." 10 years after fleeing her engagement party in a wedding dress, Chloe Evans stood in a congressional hearing room testifying about proposed whistleblower reforms. She wore a professional suit, spoke with authority earned through years of advocacy work, commanded respect from senators who'd once seen her father as a peer. The reforms passed with bipartisan support. Stronger protections for people who exposed corruption. Better legal frameworks for evidence obtained through unconventional means. Oversight mechanisms that actually had teeth instead of just existing for show. It wasn't perfect. Systems never were. But it was progress, measurable, meaningful progress that would help the next person who discovered their family or employer or government was corrupt. After the hearing, Chloe walked down the Capitol steps into D.C. evening. Her phone buzzed. Marco. "Saw the hearing. Well done, counselor. You've officially made it harder for people like me to operate outside legal boundaries. That was kind of the point. But don't worry, there will always be gray areas. You'll stay employed. Good to know. Drinks to celebrate? Can't tonight. I have a dinner thing. But rain check? Always. Chloe hung up and headed toward the restaurant where she was meeting her law school classmates. Normal life. Normal friendships. Normal career discussions. She'd built this carefully over years, a life that had nothing to do with treason or conspiracy or survival. But she'd never forget where she came from. The night she ran through the rain, the 2 weeks of training, the heist and the evidence and the trial, the transformation from victim to survivor to advocate. That girl in the wedding dress was gone, drowned in a river, according to official records. In her place was someone stronger, wiser, more dangerous when necessary. Someone who'd seen the worst of human nature and chosen to fight it anyway. Chloe Evans had died that night in the storm. What rose from the wreckage was someone entirely new. Someone who knew that justice wasn't given. It was taken by people brave enough to fight for it. Someone who understood that power came not from position or money or family, but from refusing to be broken when the world tried to break you. She'd become exactly who she needed to be, and she was just getting started.